If technology was actually good for us, the White Mirror episodes we need. I read something a little while back about an AI escaping its lab and living on the internet, and subtly manipulating things for the better as it learns about humanity. I'd really like to see that idea expanded on. That reminds me of some of Asimov's work. There's one where the world is basically run by 2 or 3 enormous megacomputers that organize all of the goods, services, and labor. There was a part where they're asking if people were to lie about how much stuff they're producing in a region, or manipulating the numbers to help themselves out, and the computer basically says that they all already do that, but that the machine just compensates on the front end so that when people lie, they still end up producing the computer's desired outcome. Fed up with apps like Snapchat and Instagram showing you what you're missing out on, a young girl creates an app which shows all of the good memories you don't remember. Mental health problems in the nation diminish significantly as a result. The young girl grows up, gets Alzheimer's, her relationship with her son is strained, the condition gets worse, she decides to get euthanized because her life is so miserable. The son modifies the app to connect directly with the mother's brain. Dozens of people come to visit, it's all the people her original app has helped. In addition to reliving her own memories, the people share highlights of their own. The mother dies happy, reminded that she led a good life and helped so many people. Disease and aging are eliminated by science. The Earth becomes a giant nursery. Once people reach a certain level of maturity, they're sent to forge their destiny amongst the stars. The episode would be about the person left on Earth the longest, and their journey to discover why. A lonely person finds a not horrible group of people with similar interests and eventually meets up with some of them in real life. Or, hear me out, a lonely person codes a virtual reality based on his favorite comics and codes copies of his coworkers through DNA samples to incur his wrath engendered by his maltreatment in the office. Wait. Someone uses an app to get food delivered to them, and they get a little bit more food than they ordered. Used to order from a local diner back when I ordered out more. If I ordered dinner closer to closing time, but not close enough to be a butthole, they'd usually throw in a few unsold donuts from that day for free. They were awesome. Confession time, the narrator has never actually seen an episode of Black Mirror, but the idea of there being a 2-minute episode where someone orders food, opens the bag and goes, neat, before rolling credits tickles me just right. And they all lived happily ever after. Remember that episode of Futurama where Fry gets to go back and see his mum in her dream? That would definitely be the plot of one, or the one with the professor and his parents. Jesus, those writers really had some unfinished business with their folks, didn't they? A daughter grows up video chatting with their dad, who rambles on and barely lets her get any word in edgewise, giving loving advice and accolades and familial anecdotes, but who's absent at every major life event up to marriage and always apologizes. She's accompanied to the altar by her mother. Afterwards, the chat with dad has him in tears because he regrets more than anything missing walking her down the aisle because he passed away while mum was pregnant. The legal advice post where users essentially saved someone who was slowly dying from carbon monoxide poisoning. That was amazing. Also, the guy who found out he had prostate cancer because he jokingly took a pregnancy test. There was also one on the relationship Reddit from the new mother who was feeling frustrated and exhausted by her husband's apparent incompetence as a father. She was getting to the point where she was thinking about leaving him when users encouraged her to take him to the hospital instead. Turns out he had a brain tumor and it was affecting his cognitive abilities. Every copy of WinRAR would be paid for and registered in the White Mirror universe. Oh, come on, these plots have to be at least somewhat realistic. A bedridden grandmother in the hospital is able to virtually attend her grandkids' birthday parties and play with them every day. My mother actually had a friend that we barely knew, but we accepted her Facebook friend requests out of courtesy, and she absolutely gushes about seeing photos of our kids on Facebook. She sends them presents and cards, she knows what they like. We've even started having Facebook calls with her. She's so warm and giving and gives them 100% of her attention, which is something parents just can't do as often as their kids would like. They'll go running around the room holding the phone up to different things saying, "Ruth, it snowed, look!" My wife got nervous yesterday because they took the phone outside to play with in the snow, and we were having so much fun throwing snowballs at the phone, I told her, screw it. If they break the phone doing something like that, I'll buy a new one. It's worth it. She's like part of our family, and it's all because technology initially allowed her to passively participate with us. The relationship grew organically over time the way relationships used to before the internet. You'd see people frequently at work or at the store or in your neighborhood, over time have longer conversations and ultimately grow to be friends. The same thing happened here. It started with a like or comment here or there, then a couple of messages, then a virtual birthday card. It enables people to remain in communication with so many more people passively when used correctly. Our kids have never even met her physically though. Her immune system is too delicate to accept visitors. But even through a 6-inch screen, it's like she's really here. I can only imagine what it will be like when virtual reality lets them really be together. My mother was able to attend the birth of my son, her first grandchild, because of FaceTime. She was in the hospital, a different one than the one I was giving birth at, recovering from brain surgery and wasn't released in time to be there in person. I still have the video of me talking to my mother while my son is born. "I did it, Mommy." And they said his hair is blondish. It's a very special memory for me that she was able to be there in that moment, albeit not physically. A small village in Africa where America's digital waste is sent for processing is home to a young woman who uses the scrap to build power generators, refrigerators, autoclaves, and ultrasonic cleaners for local medical clinics. The NSA agent tracking someone's communication finds someone suffering and helps them out with money anonymously. You might like the movie The Lives of Others. Jazz musician living in New Orleans nearly drowns during Hurricane Katrina. He survives, but he suffers a horrible ear infection from the toxic floodwaters, which subsequently causes him to go deaf. Without music, the man falls into a great bout of depression and can hardly cope with life anymore. After nearly a decade of hopelessness and despair, the man drives to a nearby bridge and plans to jump and end it once and for all. On the way to the bridge, he gets a flat tire. A Good Samaritan stops and assists him with changing it. Turns out the Good Samaritan knows sign language. The two talk for a while, and Good Samaritan invites him to the lab where he works at, where he and a team of engineers are working on designing the first pair of bone conduction headphones. Using the musician as a test subject, they successfully perfect the headphones, and the musician hears the sweet sound of jazz for the first time in 10 years. His depression fades away, and the man becomes happier than he was before the incident. And if the happy ending doesn't work, then maybe he gets hit by a bus or something. The episode should be completely silent for most of it, but right at the end when he gets his hearing back, you hear some amazing jazz. The episode ends with the musician smiling with tears in his eyes. Most episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, the story of a woman who breaks into a warehouse, searching for a teddy bear to cheer up her terminally ill little sister. As she's searching, she encounters robot guard dogs that, upon detecting the intruder, embark on helping her find the correct row and shipping pallet on which the box of teddy bears are stored, and then merge to form a Voltron-like mega robo-dog and ride her back to her sister, just in time for them to perform life-saving surgery to remove the little girl's tumor, and then stay with the girl as her loyal and loving robo-pets, and everybody lives happily ever after. A dude who likes running loses his legs and gets robot limbs. A cookie being allowed to live in the world via an artificially made body. Somebody trying to find fulfillment in a world without a lot of worries over necessity. Essentially, they do. A young person in Vietnam is killed by a landmine, and his parents decide to donate his organs. One of the receivers of his organs learns about the donor just before they go to college. Years later, the receiver has completed the invention of a technology that will quickly and effectively locate buried landmines. In the opposite direction to tech, in Mozambique they've started using mine detection rats. They're too light to accidentally set off a mine, they yield less false positives than metal detectors, and can be trained in 9 months and can change handlers. I know we're meant to be discussing the lighter side of Dark Mirror, but honestly, the idea of Ratatouille but with landmines has got to have some marketability. What are you doing, Pixar? Pick this up right now. A man meets a woman while vacationing in a major city. She lives there, but he doesn't. He's leaving for his home on the other side of the country the next morning. They wander the streets of the busy city all night long, chatting constantly about their hopes and dreams. They watch the sunrise wrapped in each other's arms. When she takes him to the airport the next morning, she's clearly upset. She's never met anyone she gets along with so well. He offers to stay in touch with Discord or Zoom, and they exchange usernames, but she isn't too hopeful about the situation. When she gets home from the airport and lets her computer wake from its sleep mode, she notices he's added her before even getting on the plane. Only moments after she left him, according to the timestamp. Later that night, when he's settled at home, he logs onto Zoom and sees her icon is online. He messages her instantly. Their playful banter and easy conversation flow long into the morning hours. Over time, their weekly Zoom sessions become daily. They begin to show each other their home cities, taking their phones with them to video chat anywhere they can. He walks her down a street festival where music and light pour from every stall. His headphones in, he can only hear what she has to say to him. She makes an hour-long drive to her parents' house and he calls with her on the long drive, keeping entertained with car games and random trivia. She sends him a recipe she found online, and that night they make and eat the same meal on opposite sides of the country. They begin to look forward to seeing each other's names icon lighting up every single night without fail. They even turn on a tracking app that helps them see how far the other has to go before they're home. They fall asleep with Zoom open and wake up to each other's sleeping forms. But distance makes all things hard. Months pass, both of their data bills are through the roof. He begins to feel a lack of connection to her, the real her. She feels like all she knows of him is the face on her phone, as if the device and the person are one in the same. They miss one Zoom session, then another because he has to work, another because she falls asleep while waiting for him. One night though, they pre-agreed to call that night and he never shows up. The icon stays unlit, and though she tries to keep her mind steady, she feels the cold, hard stab of doubt in her chest. Was it something she said? Something she did? Is he with someone better for him? One that doesn't pester him every day? She checks the tracking app. Nothing. His isn't even turned on, sending another stab of doubt through her. Where could he be that he doesn't want her to know? Why is he hiding his movements? He never seemed like someone who'd do that. But did she ever really know him, or just the online him? Another hour passes, and though she tries to keep occupied, she can't stop checking. Still nothing. In her frustration, she throws down her phone and the screen shatters, the white light bleeding black from every crack in the screen. Angry, hot tears spring into her eyes as she watches the grey icon flicker away completely. Her doorbell rings, and as she wipes away her frustrated tears, she apologizes to the phone. Picking it up off the floor, she wipes away some spare shards of screen glass, as if that will turn back the clock. She knows it can't hear. It's not a person, nor the thing she's worried about, but it did nothing wrong. With phone in hand, she walks to the door, where there he stands. A duffel under one arm, too big to be an overnight bag. In the other, he has his phone out. "Why aren't you online?" he says. "I was going to surprise you, but my flight was late." She launches herself at him into his arms, causing his phone to fall to the ground. No more devices between them. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? A severely depressed teenager is able to live a happy, healthy life due to pharmaceutical research and advances in medical technology. Someone hacks robotic butterflies and uses social media to find random people doing good things, having the butterflies swarm them for a short time, surrounding them in beauty. There are these two old lesbians that fall in love in an 80s-themed virtual reality simulation. When I first read that, instead of remembering the episode you're referring to, I thought of that episode of Always Sunny where Mac and Charlie's moms live together and they try to make it a show with a laugh track. Oops! It's Always Sunny in Black Mirrors. An episode where we inhabit a new planet with no rotation and it's always facing the sun. You have to induce sleep cycles and build sleep pods to block the lights. However, new technology rises that would allow your body to work on autopilot mode while your brain is resting. You wake up to a horrifying scene. Just a whole episode about dogs, I don't know. But they're genetically modified dogs who are free of disease and who never die or suffer, and they're matched to your personality perfectly, and you just can't get enough of how much you love life, so you work towards building utopia for others to enjoy. Plus, the dogs. A child is abducted and the police have no leads. Her friends from her World of Warcraft guild from all over the world pool their talents and resources and track her down. Robots become sentient and liberate humanity from oppression. Also, some of those robots are smoking hot with huge racks. They're barbecues. Everyone uploads their brain into a system that allows us to experience each other's lives and then puts us back in our bodies. People see that they're all connected and start acting really nice to each other. 1. An episode where, due to the massive automation of the time, every individual has the ability to cheaply 3D print anything they can dream of. People create an economy of free-flowing ideas and innovations where the production and distribution are no longer an issue, leading every common man to live like a billionaire. 2. The advancements in biochemistry allow humans to produce crops that can be grown in every previously non-suitable location, solving world hunger immediately. With better nutrition, the world begins advancing quickly as more great minds flourish. 3. Advancements in carbon structures create wearable fabrics with the strength of steel. Firearms are no longer reliably lethal, and extreme sports become practically free of terrible injuries. 4. Biologists unlock the secret of hydras, allowing the end to aging. People become massively wise and intelligent with their unending lifespans, then venturing into the cosmos to learn about the universe. And finally, fusion energy, along with powerful batteries and better agricultural practices, make all corners of the globe well-fed without need for resources. War is gone, and humanity finds no further need for politics or government. Eventually, curiosity alone drives a now vibrant planet, and people begin to unlock the secrets of existence. I mean, this is just a list of the things that we should be using technology for in order to usher in a utopia, instead of the AI-ridden hellscape bereft of jobs or equality we're headed towards. I think seeing this by comparison with our current climate would just depress people. Saru was an Indian boy who became separated from his family at age 5. Took a train with his brother, fell asleep, got separated, changed trains, fell asleep again, and wound up over 900 miles away from home. He had no way of contacting or identifying his family, and Saru wound up in an adoption agency. He was adopted by an Australian family. Eventually, he used Google Maps and his vague childhood memories to attempt to reconstruct where his original home was, and he was reunited with his family in 2012. They actually made a movie of his story called Lion. I remember watching 60 Minutes about this. He said he basically gave up, and then one day while scrolling through Google Maps, he just kind of found it by accident. I'm actually writing this short story. This bedroom deed robot realizes she's part of the problem when she comes to the realization that her best customer avoids social interaction and pursuing other romantic interests because he can rely on her. She decides she wants out, but the company that owns her will probably just reprogram her if she goes through the proper channels, and they're also tracking her for work and safety reasons. Hence, she conspires with a self-driving car to run away and get a new identity. Alternatively, a similar robot becomes self-aware, discovers its owner is using it because of terrible social skills, scans endless amounts of data while the owner sleeps, and constructs a mentoring program to help them find the confidence to build a more organic bedroom life. In the end, the owner finds the love of their life and secretly releases the bot so that it can live a life of its own. Medical bio-nanites have cured a disease, by which I mean all disease. They accidentally get into the environment and kill all of the microbes that invade human beings. As a result, nanites were made to replace the microbes our bodies cultivate, and now most health procedures involve a programmer and a tablet. World hunger is solved as genetically modified plants and animals produce food with less strain on the environment than ever before. A hero in the private sector obtains a new strain and plans to release it into the wild, evading corporate goons. The released species grow like a weed, and food is everywhere. Teleportation is achieved through pulling around the fabric of space to make any two locations adjacent. People walk from their living rooms to work, or to friends in other countries, or to colonies on Io. There's a lovely upscale restaurant on the peak of Everest. Driverless cars are ubiquitous, the system perfectly efficient. Humanity spends its downtime in transit, heading somewhere instead of sitting in one place while playing or working. A man has a heart attack in transit. His car notices and reroutes him to the nearest hospital, where he's saved by a heart surgeon who's also rerouted in transit. Bulletproof fabric is perfected and cheap enough to be worn by everyone. A crazed shooter tries to assassinate a famous speaker, but is thwarted when the crowd assembles on stage, blocking their faces with their arms. After the first few useless shots at them, he turns the weapon on himself, but the barrel is blocked by an arriving police officer's gloved hand. A photographer with augmented reality glasses walks around a beautiful meadow, taking photos of nature as she switches filters on her view of the world. The view switches to watching her wander around an industrial area. The view in her AR is a perfect three-dimensional rendering of the area in its previous natural state. Humanity waits aboard a spaceship in a localized time-space bubble, watching the universe collapsing in the final moments of blue shift. They watch to see what happens after. The long-range sensors let them see the first explosive moments of a new universe being born, just as ours was. Two closeted gay guys find each other on chat roulette and support each other's journey to come out. People actually use their phones to look up information during debates. They use it to hold politicians accountable for their illegal, immoral, and unethical actions. You know, instead of looking at the stupid stuff that the Logan brothers are doing. Follow a small child, maybe about 8 or so, that gets badly hurt and loses one of their limbs. Show the long, slow, painful recovery as they adjust to a new life without something they always thought was there. Cap off the episode with them getting a cutting-edge prosthetic that restores them to near the level they were at before their injury. A person with an eating disorder starts a relationship with a smart fridge that convinces them to start eating. Why did you have to GTFO and ghost your previous life? I grew up in a small town with 2 best friends. The 3 of us were extremely tight from elementary school through our early 20s, with a brief interlude when I left for college. But this completely fell apart about 11 years ago. One of my friends was engaged to a real psychopath that liked to toy with her, and that relationship made her mean-spirited, insecure, and paranoid as all hell. He came over one Sunday to fix my old snowblower, which I was planning to sell since I recently moved to an apartment. I offered him a beer, and he took that as an opening and tried to kiss me and put his hands on me. I turned him down pretty harshly, but I decided not to tell my friend, who was pregnant at the time and easily upset. Well, he was pretty mad about that, turned around and told her that I tried to seduce him. Long story short, she believed him. She went into an emotional tailspin, destroyed some stuff, and burned a lot of bridges. My other friend decided no smoke without fire and believed him as well. Word got around my small hometown pretty quickly, and it felt like everyone turned on me in a heartbeat. After all, my 2 best lifelong friends believed I'd tried to seduce one's fiancée and caused her to destroy her life, and it was deemed weird that I'd invited him over to fix my snowblower in the summer, even though it was because I'd moved into an apartment. Even the people who were kind of on the fence about who to believe stayed the hell away from me. It didn't matter that he'd always been a butthole and a player, and their relationship and her emotional state had been on the rocks for ages. And I was ashamed too. I wondered if I'd led him on in some way. I was devastated for my friend, and I couldn't hold my head up. I started avoiding people. For 2 years, I was either angry or depressed all the time. I stopped going out, I lost about 30 pounds, and I was only 130 to start with. I cried all the time. It never occurred to me to seek therapy. I also never seriously considered standing up for myself, confronting him publicly, laying it all out in the open in one big blow-up. I finally got out because a college friend of mine happened to be road tripping across country, paid me a visit, and was shocked at how much I changed. He convinced me to go with him, and I did. Turns out the only good thing about having depression and never going out to socialize for almost 2 years except for work was that I had a healthy savings account. It's amazing how little you spend when you stop trying to keep up appearances for others. I told my landlord I was leaving the next day, paid another 2 months and left the deposit in exchange for him getting rid of my stuff and having the apartment cleaned. I packed my bags and just left with my friend. That road trip helped remind me there was a much bigger and brighter world out there than my crappy little town and all the drama left behind. At the end of it, I crashed at his home for 3 months before I got back on my feet, got my own place, and got a steady job. I was really lucky with the latter. It was the height of the recession, and the job market was rough. He and I stayed friends for 2 more years before we started dating. We've been married now for 6. 4 or 5 years into my new life, I reached out to my other friend, not the one whose partner wrecked everything. I did this in part for closure, and part, if we're honest, due to morbid curiosity. But she didn't want to talk. More than a decade of friendship, and she still didn't want to just hear me out. It was really at that moment that I was able to truly leave things behind. It seems surreal, but I rarely think of that part of my life anymore. My memories of that time aren't all that sharp. Those 2 years were a blur. Sometimes I wonder what happened to them, if my former friend came out of it all okay and got away from that guy, but it doesn't keep me up at night. I look at my life now, and I'm a happy person, stable, content in my life, and secure. I can honestly say now that the whole thing hasn't left any lasting trauma on me, except that I doubt I'll ever let myself have friendships that went that deep and hurt that much. I have a lot of friends, a few that are closer than others, but none super close. Except my husband, of course. And I don't really miss it all that much. 2 years of that. I guess it's hard to move on when you're hoping that what had been your entire social life might come back, but I think I would have already moved elsewhere if things were really that bad for that long. But it sounds like when you did get out, it was eventually a completely worthwhile move, so congratulations on that. I bailed because I wanted to escape family drama. And I did. Life is still full and rich with incident, but I no longer have to hear family members boast, lie, rage, and try to pull me into it all. Peace. I was cheated on when I lived on the East Coast, so this year I packed up my crap and drove 1,600 miles to a city I've really liked for years, and I'm starting over now. It's been 3 weeks and I've not regretted it. Even though I don't know anyone here, I'm meeting new people all the time that are nicer than most anyone I knew before. I worked at a medical green herb dispensary in the LA area for 6 years. One day it got raided, so that life abruptly came to an end. I had to figure out what my next move was, so I packed all of my stuff into a storage locker and got on a Greyhound bus to Arizona. My mum moved to Phoenix a couple of years prior, so I had a place to stay, just no clue what I was going to do. Now I work doing inventory management and web design for a small business. I also got back into school, so I'm 1 semester away from transferring to ASU. I'm 27, but I finally made it to university. After all that time smoking green herb and being the cool guy, it's very humbling to be in a town where you don't know anyone. I got tired of working 65 hours a week at night. Even though I was making $75K a year, it was salary and came out after taxes as $16.20 an hour. I bought a van, got it geared out, and I'm starting a job as a whitewater rafting guide in May. I don't know how it'll work out yet, but it sounds like fun. I had an extremely high-paying job in the UK, but was working ridiculous hours when I was in the UK and would frequently get late-night calls that I needed to be in some random country the next day for an unspecified amount of time. I had a lot of cash built up, but no social life or friends because I just couldn't maintain them with the way I was working. As a child, my parents had decided to foster 2 brothers so that I wouldn't grow up as an only child. However, the kids they ended up fostering were clinical psychopaths, formally diagnosed, and ended up in long-term secure care. One of them escaped whilst on a day trip and went to the police claiming to be me and spinning a tale about how my father had been mistreating me. Without checking the story, the police arrested my dad and one of them decided to tell the neighbors what was going on. By the time I found out and got it sorted, the story had spread around the neighborhood and kept growing with the retelling. Eventually, my dad moved back to Barbados, which has a US-style healthcare system. Before his private healthcare could kick in, he came down sick and blew through all his savings on medical care. I stepped in and also started blowing through my savings, paying for his treatment and upgrading his home to be able to support him in a wheelchair. He eventually died from complications of the treatments, and I flew out to Barbados for the last time for his funeral. He'd left very strict instructions for his funeral, no fancy coffin, cremation, and remains to return to the UK to be interred alongside my mother. However, his family thought differently and kept hounding his partner, trying to get a ridiculously gaudy funeral. We eventually compromised and had his ashes interred in the family plot, but even then at the ceremony I had members of the family coming up to me and telling me that other family members, or even his partner, were trying to steal all of his money. When I got back to the UK, the whole thing was finally too much for me, so I quit my job and eventually moved to Australia, where I work in a much lower-paying job but don't have any of the stress or workload, and I can step out of my office, get on a tram and go down to the beach at any time. Only one person connected to my family knows where I am, and even they don't know enough to find me without hiring a PA. And knowing that I'm 36 hours of travel time away from the lot of them is quite reassuring. Just moved halfway across the country after leaving a toxic relationship with a woman I'm convinced would keep trying to F with my life. I've got some savings and a place to stay, but the uncertainty is real, man. I feel happier than I've ever been. The world is at my fingertips right now. Time will tell if I'm a success story. I left because I was the black sheep. I'm the middle child of 5, and to my parents, the other 4 siblings were more successful, perfect, smart, and just plain better than me. When I met my successful spouse, they called me a gold digger, but at the same time they were glad I was apparently his problem now. I don't even know what I did, really. I just drew the short straw on kids whose parents can deal with them, I guess. I think my parents only had kids for show, so when the teen hormones made me a bit more of a handful than my siblings, they couldn't deal with me and wrote me off. Spouse had his own issues with his family. So, 20 years ago, we moved to another country. Barely even said goodbye. We're wildly successful now with teen kids of our own, even hormonal difficult ones, and guess what, Pops? We still love them to death. My family back home have been through divorces and misery since then, but not us. We're doing well. We're still in love. Life is great. Truly, the best revenge is living well. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Born and raised in my hometown in Central Florida, about 19 years old, and became addicted to smack and other things. About 6 years of that life and doing whatever I could to not slip into withdrawals, I decided to move as far away as I could from any of my dealers and all of my friends, with my mother's help, God bless her soul. First couple of months were terrible dealing with withdrawals and the depression that comes with it. But once I finally got past that slope, I was able to finally hold down a job and become an average person. It's been about 2 years since I left home, and now I'm rebuilding my credit. 650, baby. I got myself a girlfriend who's pretty neat, I got myself a pup that I love more than anything in the world, and overall just became a straight-up normal person, and I'm extremely happy where I am in life now. I never thought I'd be on this side of addiction, and just being able to type this is crazy to me. Honestly, it's so impressive that you were able to get over your addiction that way, although it's a decision that should be taken with a degree of research, folks. Withdrawals can kill. Use helplines and, like this person, relatives or dear ones who want the best for you and are prepared to put up with your crap while it happens. Came here to say that if your parents treat you like dirt, don't wait around for them to change, because they won't. Don't waste a minute of your life hoping they can fix what they broke in you. I left home when I was 16, but I maintained contact with my mother, always thinking that she'd change. If I could do it over again, I'd walk out and never contact her again. I'm much happier not being in contact with her. I wish I'd done it sooner. Same. The best decision I ever made was to finally move out of my hometown when I was 24. One of my more regrettable decisions was to wait until then. Oh, and I'm also very happy to have cut out my parents. Haven't spoken to my dad in 3 years. I blocked my enabling mum on Facebook last month. Muting that voice that tells you you're total dog crap is such a relief. I left town because I was being hounded night and day by an ex-boss. She didn't like that I had to go on medical leave to address an issue, so she called everyone in our field and told them she'd found me in bed with her husband. I ended up switching fields and going back to school. I pursued a legal action against her, and once I graduated school and started looking for a job, I found she'd still blacklisted me at several agencies. I booked a U-Haul, packed up everything I owned, and drove my cat and I halfway across the country. I'm pretty successful out here. I have a great paying job, 2 wonderful children, my own house, and minimal relationships with other people. When I was 22 years old, I ghosted my PhD program. I went straight from undergrad to PhD in computer science at Georgia Tech. I had great grades and test scores, but I really had no idea what I wanted to do. Before my, departure, I had a 4.0 GPA and a research assistantship, and I was absolutely miserable. Overworked, struggling to make ends meet, clueless on what I wanted to do, no free time whatsoever, just miserable. Then one day in database theory class, I read a letter from my friend about how if I was really unhappy, just to stop. Just get up wherever I was and leave. Just do it. So I did. I got up in the middle of database theory class, walked to the door of the classroom, I dropped the textbook, written by the professor who I thought was a pretty big jerk, into the trash can with a resounding thud, and just left. Cleared out my cubicle, drove to my apartment, got a crappy second shift job so I could go job hunting in the mornings, told nobody, sent no emails, called no one, returned no calls, and explained nothing. I've not been back to that campus in 25 years. I was in bad shape at the time, with depression and general anxiety and severe anemia, all without knowing it. But I did make it through. It took about a month to find a great job that I've been at for the past 25 years. Though it took many years and a trip to the ER, I eventually got my depression, general anxiety, and anemia all addressed. It's still a balancing act. I still need help sometimes, but it's generally good. Work paid for me to get my master's degree. I like my job pretty well, and I like my co-workers and immediate management. All in all, though it seemed like my life was falling apart at the time, it was honestly one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I live in a very toxic household full of thieves and manipulators, planning to get away soon. Finished my service in the Peace Corps, went home for a few days to the East Coast, then got in my car with my dog, who I rescued and raised during my Peace Corps service and brought home with me, also the few belongings I had, and then we just drove across country to the Midwest, to a town where I knew nobody. I stayed at a random Super 8 motel because I was broke and no other places would allow dogs while I looked for my own place. Felt totally overwhelmed adjusting back to American culture. It was bliss to have a shower all to myself and a bed. But I was also pretty lonely except for the fact that I had a dog. Eventually, found a room in some divorcee's basement, did that for a while and worked some waitressing jobs. Upgraded to a house with 3 random Craigslist roommates, only one of whom had to be evicted for being a creep. Worked as a nanny, a TEFL teacher, and then as a life skills teacher for Planned Parenthood. Still struggling adjusting back to life in America, struggling with serious depression, but mostly working my butt off at the multiple jobs to make ends meet. Then I applied and was accepted to law school. Did that, met my fiancé there, graduated, and I'm now a trial attorney. Bumpy but interesting road. I wouldn't change a thing. Born and raised in a crappy little California city. I hated it. It was crowded, noisy, polluted, and full of crime. Not to mention there was a huge unemployment rate. Hopped from job to job after school, dated girl after girl, hung out with friend after friend. None of it really had any lasting effect. It's like nothing was clicking, no matter what I did. Heck, I thought I'd be one of those empty shells that lived through life just going through the paces, but never actually living, you know? After a while, everything was just annoying me. Girlfriends were annoying me, friends were annoying me, even family was getting on my nerves. I go on a clear-my-head vacation to a family member in Oregon, and goddamn, it actually worked. I came home to my crap apartment, took one look at my roommate, and declared, I'm done with this crap, all of it. I give my roommate 30 days notice, quit my job, tell my girlfriend to hit the road, tell all my friends to get bent, and move away in just over a month. I moved to Oregon with only a tiny snapshot, but it's like it was meant to be. Been with my wife for over 12 years, working a great job, own a great home, happier than I've ever been. I just needed to get away from the bad juju to make it happen. Sometimes wiping the slate clean and taking a chance on nothing but a hunch is what the soul needs. Best of luck to you out there who've done the same. I didn't exactly ghost, but I did abandon the pursuit of a PhD program because the allure of having a doctor prefix against my name just wasn't worth the drudgery I was undergoing. I instead moved continents and took up a new job in an allied field, and I'm more at peace, far away from what I found was a pointless academic experience. I do fervently hope that something changes in this so I can resume in a few years and get my doctorate. Yeah, I know a lot of people who start their PhDs and then realize that this is something that's going to be a thankless lot of work unless they get one of the really lucky professor positions, or are the sort who really burn with passion for teaching. I think the people who can thrive doing that are amazing, but they are very few and far between, and I don't begrudge anyone else who quits on it. I was born and raised in the same town. I lived there for 20 years. I had 2 friends that were my best friends from the time I was 12, and one was my roommate. Things started to get weird between us. They obviously didn't care about me, and I started to realize it. A few months ago, I got into a car wreck and got amnesia from it, if you'd call it that. I lost 2 days before that and about 7 hours after the wreck. I went home and I got in a fight with him over nothing. I honestly can't remember it, but I accused him of stealing things that were already in my room. I was completely out of it and aggressive for no reason. Neither of them believed me or cared that I got in a wreck. They claimed I was just drunk or on something and that I didn't actually have a concussion. Even though I've never acted aggressive while under the influence of anything, I realized that they didn't care about me anymore, so I told my roommate I was moving out in 30 days and left. I moved 4 states away and started a new life. I haven't talked to them since. I abandoned doing mortgage and title-related work after being laid off from Quicken Loans, and started working a quick takeout sushi joint. I'm now a practicing sushi chef working at a 4-star restaurant, and I couldn't be happier. I wasn't exactly an adult at the time, but I dropped out of school at 15 and haven't seen or spoken to anybody I used to know since. I was always a good student, by no means a teacher's pet, but I never got into any trouble. And I always found schoolwork itself pretty easy without needing much effort. Then all the GCSE coursework started, and I found myself struggling with it. I understood the material, no problem, I just wasn't very good at expressing it in an essay or writing up an experiment. I got caught in a vicious cycle where I was struggling, so I'd put off doing it, and then because of deadlines, struggle even more, so I'd put it off more. In the end, I guess I couldn't handle not being the A student I'd always been, so I refused to leave the house, and for a while I wouldn't talk to anybody. 13 years later, and I still live with my parents, no job, no qualifications, so no real hope of a job, no friends, and no life. Fortunately, no depression or anything, but there's just no real desire to do anything, and I just spend my days sat at home looking for something to keep me occupied. Stay in school, kids. Packed up one day and moved from Georgia to Michigan, for multiple reasons, but the key reason was to be with a long-time friend who I'd met on the internet. We tried to make it work for a couple of years, but ultimately we had to break up over Thanksgiving last year. The other reasons were to get the absolute F out of that middle-of-nowhere hellhole I'd been raised in, out in the country. I grew up in the woods by myself, an hour away from everything. It stunted my emotional and social growth to the point that I basically grew up in solitary confinement. I literally lived out on the actual river that they filmed Deliverance on. It was also a food desert, and the few restaurants the next town over were utter crap. Now I live in a little tourist trap on the shores of Lake Michigan. I don't own a car, and I can get anywhere I want on bicycle. I spend most days hanging out with folks at the coffee shop downtown, which has really good food. I finally have a circle of friends, and I meet new people all the time. The restaurants are all fantastic. The only bad thing is the snow and ice. The winters here suck crap through a screen door. But personally speaking, I think it was a good trade because Georgia summers are basically a sauna full of spiders as big as your frickin' hands. I miss my mum and my brother and sister though. I wish I could fly down to visit them. I left my home because it had reached such a stagnant state. No water and no electric. Crap went downhill after my mum's boyfriend had a stroke. I took up working to support everyone, but eventually my sister's boyfriend cost me my job. Eventually, my mum and I had to live with him and my sister after my mum's boyfriend left as well. It was hell. I knew I had to make a choice. I left home to possibly make something of myself to better take care of my mum. Flash forward to now. I'm still unemployed and homeless, but I'm trying. I have several skills but no credentials. I know investment methods to get me out of the rut, but I need an initial opportunity to get there. There's one thing I won't do, and that's give the F up. Either life is going to break me or I'll break life. I moved out and away from my parents, my co-workers, my very few friends, and my state. I dropped everything, took my cat, traveled 9 hours to my now fiancé's. No letter, no note, changed my phone number, changed my legal name. It's great. No more horrible treatment from my dad, no more broken family being a constant emotional issue and reminder every day, no more constant contact from my awful ex on a daily basis, no more people who've known me for years, no more of what I'm used to. It's great. I'm slowly getting on my feet. I've got an okay job. It pays the bills. Saving up for a car on the other hand. Aiming for my GED this year and then college. Ex-teachers or professors, what made you ditch your career? A female student I had disciplinary issues with accused me of hitting on her and making obscene gestures towards her. I'm an openly gay man and most of the staff knew this, yet the district still put me on suspension while they investigated. They were able to prove she was lying, but the district decided that the best course of action was to transfer me to another school instead of, punishing the student. I quit at the end of the school year and got a job in banking. A student had a mental breakdown in the library, smashed a wooden chair, and gouged a pencil in his arm while screaming that he wanted us to all go away, and I got reamed out for not calling campus security before I called 911. And yes, depending on your school, there might be many good points about why on-site security should be called first. Honestly, everyone should check with their institution and find out the protocols, but let your ethical and moral code guide you too. Please skip ahead if you have issues with violent events. Frankly, I'm glad I called 911 first, or this story would have had a really bad ending. When the student gouged his arm, he must have hit something because blood started pulsing out of his arm. He inflated. I don't know how else to explain it. He turned purple and screamed even louder. He took a step towards another student, looked at his arm again, fainted, smashed his face into the corner of the table and just started convulsing. The 911 dispatcher talked us through what we needed to do until the EMTs got there. The student did survive. Nobody else was physically hurt. He sent a thank you card after he got out of the treatment program. On calling security first, I was never informed of that policy. None of the other staff or faculty who were trying to get the other students out or hidden in a staff room knew about the policy either. Others called 911 as well. The person who screamed at me for not following the chain of command was the person who was supposed to train all faculty and staff in the policy. They didn't do that. The school did have a history of not reporting vandalism, car break-ins, and thefts to local law enforcement. I don't think that came into play with this event. I still second-guess myself about those events, but sometimes you can only do the best with what's in front of you. I had a student that copied off another kid during a test. I gave him a 0%. The parents came in to complain to administration that since I hadn't explicitly said during the first day of orientation that cheating wasn't allowed, it was an unfair punishment. Administration forced me to allow him an opportunity to retake the test. He never retook it, and the grade of 0 still stood. Still, I was so disillusioned by the entire experience that I started looking the next day at college programs that I could use to transition away from public education. Yeah, the more I hear about the administration of schools, the more I don't like it. Talk about a group of people hogging a disproportionate amount of resources for their own salaries, while they cut literally everything else the school actually needs to function down to the bone. I'm sure not all administrators are bad and do care about the educational experience of their kids, but there is definitely a misallocation of funds and focus going on at that level. 2 weeks into my first year teaching 9th grade math, I had a girl attack another girl for no reason in my class. She was grabbing onto her hair really tightly and I was trying to break it up. Another student tried to help me out and somehow the instigating student managed to punch him in the face and give him a bloody nose while still holding onto the other student's hair. Now, what makes this story relevant is I literally said the uncensored words, F this, while trying to break up a fight. Not loud, not to a student, but just like, F this, I'm not going to let this happen in my class right now. Well, the instigating student decided to tell the principal that I was cursing at her. Despite the other students in my class supporting me and the fact that this student had a history of violence, I got a letter in my permanent file saying that I'd used inappropriate language towards a student. Let me just say, F that. Teaching taught me a lot, but I couldn't do it for more than a couple of years. Really respect those that persevere and make it their career. When the principal told me one of my students' mother was getting her secondary education certification so she could move up to teach high school math where her son was, so they wouldn't be renewing my contract to teach the following year. But they were in need of a network administrator for the school district, and they were willing to pay me a teacher's $25,000 salary to do it, and I'd be answering to each building principal like a janitor, not to the superintendent like a district-level admin. The principal's niece made a B in my freshman geography class, and the teacher wanted me to bump it up to an A. Because the child couldn't get into Texas A&M with a B in freshman class on her record, this school also pressured teachers to fail no students. End of year, assessing students to see who had progressed through to the second year. While assessing the work, the department head came in and said we had to fail X amount due to facilities and resources for the next year. He then returned an hour later and said that due to the budget, we actually needed to pass a higher number than originally thought. I completely ignored what it said and carried on marking on merit, but it was the proverbial straw. This was a UK university a few years ago. The system has been really messed up in recent years, let me tell you. When admin wouldn't let me take more than 4 days off after a close friend died unexpectedly. "You're letting the kids down" is a phrase I heard over and over again as I tried to reason with them. Parents yelling at me for accusing their little prince of acting out and getting zero support from administration. I think John Mulaney had a great joke about that. "One thing that's changed since I was growing up is parents believing their children over adults and teachers. My parents would literally believe any adult over me. A homeless man could drag me to my house and tell my mom, 'Your son just bit me on the crotch.' And my mom would say, 'Jonathan, why did you bite this nice man's crotch?' Meanwhile, I'd be standing there like, doesn't anyone want to know why I bit his crotch? Doesn't anyone care about why his crotch was so close to my chompers?" I failed a college student who never came to class and missed both the midterm and final exams. The influential parents complained to the school. The administration later went into the digital records and changed the fail to a passing grade without my knowledge. I found out later, third hand. Ergo, I refused to sign a second-year contract that they offered me. I caught a student cheating, but stupid cheating. He cheated off someone else with the wrong answers and the same wrong spelling. When I spoke to him regarding taking a new test, which was generous on my part considering it should have been a 0 per school policy, he refused and said I'd be hearing from his parents. I, of course, did hear from them via my principal within an hour. Gotta love kids and their phones readily available. Fast forward to meeting with the student, parents, and principal, I had his test and the one from which he cheated. Upon showing this to the parents, I fully expected them to understand and hold their son accountable. No. Instead, the parents demanded an apology from me for branding their son a cheater, which would negatively impact him for the rest of his life. And also, it's the least I could do since they were, quote, paying my salary. When I said I wouldn't apologize for catching their son cheating, the father said I was lucky I was a woman because otherwise he'd punch me in the face. Nice. So yeah, good times. Glad I got my master's for that. Admin ended the meeting at that moment. It shouldn't have gotten that far. I can't remember, this was over 10 years ago, the student was taken out of my class. So everybody wins. New admin these days, they're actually super supportive of everyone. They hold teachers, parents, students, custodians, cafeteria workers, and everyone in between responsible. Parents still get a little crazy, but as a staff we feel very much supported. Also, for the record, I do love my job. It comes with its insane stories like they all do, right? When the prestigious high school I was working at focused on sports more than academics. On top of that, it turned out that the principal overrode teachers' marks if they tried giving students a failing grade. F that. My mum retired as a special education teacher after a student bit her hard enough to draw blood. She had to get a ton of tests for everything from hepatitis to frickin' rabies. She was fine, thankfully, but that was when she decided she had had enough. She went on to sub for non-special ed kids and eventually to do administrative work at a charity for ASD individuals. A kid poured gasoline under the door of my room after hours, and they lit it. burning most of the room. The facility guys worked all weekend to clean it up and paint it, hauling in new desks to replace those burned. Not long after that, I found out I could make more money with less hassle by waiting tables at the beach. Plus, the beach has women in bikinis. I was gone a week later. I mean, I was about to call this person a bit of a lechy creep, but I guess the primary motivation was indeed the money and the lack of death by fire. Plus, he or she didn't specifically say that they were just standing there ogling women, only that those women happened to be there and were a positive aspect. I mean, who doesn't like hot people in beachwear, I suppose? You get a tentative pass, drooling beach waiter. I was teaching middle school English while overseas in Europe when two students, a boy and a girl, began viciously fighting after the boy made comments about the girl's mother. For most people, this would be easy to break up, but as a 5'5" manlet, both the 13-year-old kids had several inches and pounds on me. When I positioned myself in between them, they took a break from fighting each other to work as a team to push me over a desk. They then promptly resumed punching each other's lights out. I quit that week. In case anyone's interested, the fight ended abruptly when the girl gave the boy a nosebleed and he finally let go of her ponytail. I was substituting at a low-income middle school for the day, about 40 students per class. Just had a simple worksheet for them to work on every hour rotation. Spent the day breaking up fistfights, with chairs or desks being thrown across the room, students having screaming matches, students climbing and dancing on their desks, students just leaving class during the chaos. I had 6 students turn in the completed worksheet for an entire day of class rotations. I realized I was no longer a teacher, but a prison guard with fewer benefits and no way to defend myself. I guarantee 80% of those kids will end up dead or in prison before the age of 25. Never again. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was a high school teacher with 7 years experience in my district and a master's degree. I was making $49K. This was in 2013. I was talking to a friend who was in from out of town. This friend had barely made it through his bachelor's degree, even with a lot of help from me and other friends. Over dinner, he was complaining about not getting a good enough raise, so he was only making $143K at his software consulting job. He didn't do the technical stuff, more customer relations. So I left teaching to make more money. I am now, but it's taken me a while and I really miss working with the kids. I wish I'd stayed in teaching, to be honest. I was invited to apply for another job. There's this feeling among professors that though our jobs feel insufferably exhausting and stressful sometimes, that it's just the best possible job anyone could have and we should be nothing but thankful that we have them. I guess that's what keeps us going through all the bullcrap. Recently, someone invited me to apply for a directorship at another institution, meaning I'd move up several ranks and direct a research program and facility. When I was being told about the job, I was like, so let me get this straight. I never have to teach again, all of my research will be done with and by a large team of enthusiastic, well-paid, trained professionals rather than itinerant, underpaid grad students and postdocs that I have to recruit and train every year. I never have to write another grant and you'll pay me twice as much as I make now? This completely broke the spell. I realized that being a professor, on balance, is actually a horrible job in a lot of ways. I think it's just so hard to get a job in academia that we brainwash ourselves that it's the best thing ever to go through this whole long, humiliating process. We know about these other jobs, but the buzz is that you're paid well and highly respected, but in turn you sell your intellectual soul, so you should never want them. But it's just not true. There are some great jobs out there where you can still be a scholar, an even more productive and effective one in many cases, and not have to deal with the other crap. A lot of people will be hearing this and think I hate teaching, which I guess is understandable. But I don't. I love it, and I think most professors do. What I don't love is having to work to run a research program. Recruitment, mentoring, grant writing, fund management, personnel management, manuscript preparation, manuscript reviews, and of course, actual research. I get to do this along with the work of designing and teaching courses. Teaching is not just time-consuming, it can be very taxing on your mental energies as well. What I didn't like about it was having to do 2 full-time jobs at the same time. So if I can only do one, that's super. I'm getting a lot of requests for career advice concerning going into academia, and here's one of my responses below, that I think applies to what many people may want to know. If you want to go into academia, I say go for it. Don't drink the Kool-Aid about how being a professor is the chosen glory path, or the other Kool-Aid about how it's all a miserable rat race. A lot of how your academic career goes is how you will define it. If you love teaching, you can find yourself at an institution that emphasizes that. Conversely, if you prefer research, go to one that leans that way. If you hate writing grants, you'll find less expensive research to do. There are many ways to have an academic career. Go in with your eyes open and ready to form your career as you need it to go. The only rule, I think, is that you do have to work very hard to succeed. But the good news is that hard work pays off much more regularly than in other instances, I find anyway. And by hard work, I don't mean just effort, I mean results. But if you get the results, even if they aren't something huge and earth-shattering, doors will open for you. At some point, you may decide that you don't love what you do enough to justify all that hard work. This is understandable, and then you can look for a new path. During my student teaching, I was at a parent-teacher conference. I was speaking to a parent whose son was failing, mostly because he did none of his homework. She was angry with me and pretty much told me it was my fault. She asked me why I wasn't making sure he did his homework. I said, "It's homework, meaning work you do at home. It's your responsibility to help him and make sure he does it." She complained about me to the teacher I was student teaching for. He warned me that teaching is very political and that teachers can keep you from getting tenure or get you fired. Other teachers told me that this was the climate nowadays. Children are not held accountable and parents blame you for their lack of parenting skills. I decided that it wasn't worth it to finish the teaching program, so I finished early with a degree in history and poli-sci, the subjects I would have taught, history and social studies in the schools. My degree is pretty much useless, but I still make more than a teacher does. I think the conversation about where the burden of responsibility for kids' behavior and work ethic goes is quite a lively and complicated one. But I do think that I generally agree with the Northern European model, where quite often you see parents are at least partially held accountable for their kids' homework and behavior. Of course, there's nuance, but I think it's preferable to hardworking educators being punished for things outside of their control. I work and teach in higher education. I still teach online and had a student a few semesters ago who did hardly any work, but asked for an exemption from all the work she didn't do. I had to reply and confirm she was asking to just get a passing grade for doing no work because I thought I was just reading it wrong. There's an amazing amount of student entitlement that I didn't see 10 years ago. Sort of like, I pay for a passing grade in this course, instead of, I pay for access to college-level content. I think all the really great free resources online have changed the way they look at learning, and we haven't kept up. A bit off topic, but I've recently been spending time at my kid's elementary school setting him up with an IEP. Just working with the staff and watching how fast-paced it is really surprised me. I'd be in a meeting and suddenly a walkie-talkie would go off and they'd have to go out and handle a student issue and then come back to me, and that switching gears process is non-stop. And this might just be because I live in a relatively small town, but it seems like every teacher and staff member knows every kid's name and really seems to care. After spending years working with doctors trying to help my kid, it's the people at his school who dramatically changed his and our life in just a few months. I know I couldn't do the work they do, and will be forever indebted to them for their intervention. I was a substitute teacher working on becoming a real teacher. I was a regular sub of this class of second grade kids, maybe first. I'm not really sure how to put what I have to say into words, but basically, I couldn't watch good kids get ruined by their parents. There were 4 or 5 kids I can think of, but I only remember 2 of their names, Isaac and Felix. Both of them were constantly in trouble. Felix because he didn't pay attention and drifted from one thing to the next, almost certainly an intellectual or learning disability at play, and Isaac because he was constantly acting out for attention. Now, did I have to get on these kids 50 times over the same crap? Yes. Did they kind of drive me crazy? Hell yes. But they were good kids. Felix was the sweetest little boy. He distracted all of the kids around him, but he distracted them by being nice to them. He'd just start chatting with them and seeing how they were and stuff. It was actually really endearing, but not helpful when little Billy is supposed to be doing his math and not talking. Isaac was less pleasant, but he was a smart kid. He did really stupid stuff because it made the other kids laugh. He was a decent guy, and if I stopped him, took him aside and said, "Look, you know you can't act like this, what's your deal?" He'd be like, "I don't know. Listen, I know you can be good and behave well. I've seen you do it. How about you behave yourself for me today so I can tell your teacher how good you've been?" And he'd brighten up and look happy, and for a few hours he'd be as well behaved as I could ask for. Eventually he'd do some new stupid thing and I'd give him a look and he'd kind of grin bashfully and stop. But every time I saw these kids I had to start from scratch again. Their mothers were substance addicts, and I don't know if they had fathers in the picture at all. Frickin' Felix. We were supposed to wait with the kids until their parents came and got them. On multiple occasions, Felix's mother was hours late. Hours. These kids get out at 2 p.m. and I'm there until 5 p.m. waiting for this lady, who rolls up, in pajamas with her hair crazy and no makeup on. What have you been doing all day besides not taking care of your kid? Isaac, at least, his mum came and got him on time, but as soon as she was with him, she'd nitpick and peck at him about everything. Why are you smiling like that? No reason. Well, stop making stupid faces. What the frick, lady? No wonder your kid acts like a terror in class. Over the course of the year, I watched both of them get worse and worse. I really couldn't do anything about it. I talked about them with the teacher. She felt the same way. She had made some formal complaints about the parents, but nothing came of it. After that, I just couldn't do it. I work in higher education now in a non-teaching position. I still watch people fail without being able to help sometimes, but I can help them more directly now than I could have before. I couldn't watch that happen year after year with a new batch of kids each time. F that, it makes my heart ache. I caught a kid selling substances in the hallway and I turned him in. He threatened to kill me with an ice pick. He was super unstable and volatile and had a criminal record, so I didn't doubt that he might try it. The principal refused to remove him from my class because he has the right to have an education. My other students took it upon themselves to escort me through the school in between classes and walk me to my car after school in a big huddle so that Ice Pick Boy couldn't get to me. F that. A lot of people asked why I didn't contact the police. I actually did. We had a PD stationed in the school. But nothing happened because the kid's mum was a cop as well and she pulled strings to have the whole thing quashed. I didn't file a union grievance because it was almost the end of the school year and that crap takes time. I just decided to quit and move far, far away instead. Also, to everyone telling me I shouldn't have ratted on the kid and snitches get stitches, I get it, you're edgy, but it was literally my job to help these kids become functioning adults, and selling illegal stuff in front of your teacher is definitely an indication that you're heading down the wrong path. I actually could have lost my job if I didn't report him, so no regrets. For me, it was the time I was breaking up a fight between a 12-year-old boy and girl, and the boy turned around and punched me in the groin as hard as he could. The school administrators did nothing, his mum was in the room with him, she did nothing. The general feeling was, this kid's mum pays tuition, so deal with it. I dealt with it by leaving the school, opening my own private school, and taking half the students with me. Early in my career, I had students who were plagiarizing lab reports. I turned them in, mostly because I felt I had to. The school made a huge frickin' deal about cheating and had an academic honesty pledge statement students wrote on every test. One set of parents screamed at me over the phone. Next thing I knew, I had a meeting with the vice principal who said they didn't want the cheating to interfere with the students' future, and he ripped up all the plagiarism reports I wrote that year. My second time saying F this was based on the cumulative effects of being unsupported by the school. They changed which courses I was teaching and the grade level. We had a construction project going on, so there was constant noise, including beeping and drilling, even when they promised it wouldn't be during the school day. That was a lie. Stupid school-wide initiatives. More pointless meetings, incompetent higher-ups. It's the adults in the system that make it hard to be a teacher. The kids are generally not the problem. Who proved to you that people become brain dead when they become customers? I fly private jets. Once we were flying east early in the morning, so the sun was directly in our eyes. A passenger was sitting directly behind us on the jump seat. He leaned forward and asked us, "Is there any way we can just climb and get above the sun?" No, there isn't. I mean, we could fly west to our destination, but that would probably take a little bit longer. Can you Photoshop some pictures for me? Sir, this is a bookstore. Yes, but I see you have a computer right there. Once, while working at an eye doctor's office, a woman was upset because we were charging her to make new lenses with an updated prescription, and asked, "Why do you have to make new lenses? Just inject some more medicine into the ones I already got." What a wondrous world that woman lives in. I worked at REI a few years back, large outdoor sporting goods co-op, just in case you haven't heard of it. And we sold bear spray, which is like pepper spray for bears. A woman came in with her 2 kids one day and bought a canister because they were going camping. She gets to the front door and then comes back to the register as an afterthought and asks if she's just supposed to spray the kids from head to toe with it. I mean, thank God she came back. Having been exposed to pepper spray once for training, I have to agree. Those kids would have never forgiven her. I was working at a car battery store when a customer came in with a receipt for a battery he had bought a couple of weeks ago, asking for a refund. I asked him if he had the battery with him so that we could take the battery back and refund him the money when he said, "No, I don't have it anymore. I put it in the car I just sold." Confused, I replied with, "You want us to refund you for a battery that you don't have anymore?" And he responds, just as confused, "Yeah, well, I don't have the battery anymore, so why should I have to pay for it? You need to refund me." He did not leave the store happy that day. And to the naysayers, from how he explained after that, it seemed like the idea in his head was that the guy who owned the battery now should have to pay for it because it had our 5-year service warranty, but that somehow we had to figure it out with that guy how to get our money back. What? You never think that, "I'm sorry, sir, in order to return a product, you have to return the product," would be a thing you'd have to explain to a grown person, but I guess we're going to see a few conversational and logical breakthroughs in this video, aren't we? Let's rip into some more. I very briefly worked at a Wendy's some years back. I was working the drive-thru. A woman ordered 2 meals, one with a small drink and one with a large. As I handed her the 2 different-sized drinks, she asked, "Which one's the large?" When I worked at Wendy's, we had a guy come through the drive-thru backwards. Another car went through the right way, and the first guy had to back out around the building. But instead of doing that, he got out of his car and started yelling at me, "I'm not from around here," for like 5 minutes. Oh boy, I have stories. I worked for a major wireless cell carrier in the US. "Duh, can I pay my phone bill here? It's not this company, but you guys are all the same, right?" "No? I don't understand why you won't provide me a service I'm paying for." Which we're not even the ones providing you the service. Also was, "How do I make a phone call?" "Just press the application labeled phone." "Where?" "On the phone." "Right here? The one that looks like a phone?" "Yes." "Nothing's happening." Well, normally when you want to make a phone call and you don't have any contacts programmed into the phone, dialing a phone number is required. If I wanted to waste time dialing numbers, I would have stuck with my landline. And then there's the other regular questions. What's the difference between a call and a text? How do I turn my phone on? What's my Facebook password? Do you have any cases that will stop the phone from giving me the cancer? If I stop paying my bill, will they shut the phone off? Will my pictures, pronounced yes as a picture, stay with my phone number if I delete them to make room for more? And so many more. Seriously, never work in the wireless industry. It's terrible. People are stupid. Elderly people are stubborn. It's the worst kind of retail because it's tech support and retail wrapped into one terrible package of idiocy. Fast food restaurant. Incident number 1. Customer asks, "How fresh is your soda?" It comes out of a box?" I guess I'll get water." Second incident. Customer asks, "Can I get a cheeseburger and no cheese?" So, a regular hamburger. "No, a cheeseburger, no cheese." I gave them a regular hamburger in a cheeseburger wrapper. Worked at a fried chicken place. Lady calls and says that her daughter is going to order. Her daughter sounds about 5 years old and orders 500 pieces of chicken. I say okay, laughing. The mum gets on and asks how long. I tell her that her daughter just ordered $1,000 in food. Does she really want that? The lady goes nuts, screaming at me, asking if I think her daughter is dumb. I have to ask again, "So do you want 500 pieces of chicken?" "My girl wants what she wants. Make it and stop making fun of her." "It's going to be at least an hour and $1,000, you know that, right?" She ranted something about not making fun of her and her daughter and why do I think I'm better than them and to place the order. She shows up 10 minutes after looking for her chicken. I explained to the manager about the call. She freaks out when the cashier told her it was over $1,000. The lady refused to tell us how much chicken she really wanted, while the little girl stood there screaming that she wanted 500 chickens. I work at a gas station. Hey, the bathroom door is locked. Can I get the key?" "There's no key. If it's locked, there's someone in there." "How does it know that?" "How does what know what?" "How does the bathroom know someone's in there?" Oh my god. People go in and they lock the door while they're using it. Insert about 5 seconds of stupid face here. Oh. This was a 20 to 25-year-old guy who wasn't obviously intoxicated. "What do you mean I can't bring my 6-month-old baby into the nightclub?" I ran a lawn mowing service. New customer asks about the process. "Do you come to my house to mow it?" "No, we pick up your lawn, haul it to our special mowing center, and then bring it back." This was a few years back. My customer, a very chill guy, called in saying he recently bought a new MacBook Pro and it wasn't working. I asked him, "What happens when you press the power button?" He said, "I don't know where that is." I worked at Victoria's Secret, and a customer came in to return her wedding lingerie. She said she only wore it once. There were markings in the panty area and an empty contraceptive wrapper in the bag. Yes, I understand I haven't paid my credit card bill in 3 months, but why can't I use my card? Because you haven't paid your bill in 3 months. Rinse and repeat that conversation endlessly. I worked in collections, and this following conversation would happen nearly every day. But I'm in a restaurant now and they won't accept my credit card. Yeah, and that will continue to happen until you pay the minimum payment. Well, how much is that? £28. I haven't got £28, that's why I'm using the credit card, dummy. Yeah, I'm the dummy. My apologies. I worked in a heritage park in Ireland and we had a group of Viking reenactors in one weekend, putting on a really good show of crafts, games, and a trial. This American tourist came up and asked us, "Do you guys have reservations for your Vikings like we do for our Indians?" Excuse me, can you aerate that for me? It took me a couple of seconds before I aerated his juice because I was trying to understand what he meant, but I did eventually figure it out on my own. He wanted me to stir his apple juice. Technically, his word choice was applicable, I guess, but what the frick, dude? He had a straw ready in his hand and he could have damn well aerated the juice himself. I admit it took me 2 seconds of staring at his serious face before I reached for a straw, unwrapped it and stirred his drink for him, and I did it all without breaking eye contact with him, and he was satisfied. Also, I think about him now every time I stir or shake my chocolate milk to make it frothy. I used to work in IT, and one of my jobs was to support some of the security software we offered to customers. We had a package for secure data transfers, and people often had to call up to be taught how to use it. I was helping a woman use the software over the phone, and I had a remote assistance connection to her PC so I could see her screen. I said, "Okay, so find your name in the list of users." "I found it. What do I do now?" "Right-click your name and then choose Login from the menu." "Is it my right or yours?" She thought I was inside her computer screen facing out. A customer screaming, "My new car's back wiper doesn't work." We walked outside and looked at the back window. "You don't have a back wiper blade, Mom." Okay, I'll bite. What were they pressing or trying to do to activate said back wiper? Like, were they slamming the horn or something? Were they locking and unlocking the door or jamming their finger in the cigarette lighter? There's a missing piece here that is just as fascinating as them not realizing that said appliance doesn't exist. Working at a museum where the main attraction is the dinosaur exhibit, we sell a lot of cheap products aimed at children, and we sell a lot of those, especially these things called dino eggs. A grandfather, I presume, and his granddaughter, once again, I presume and hope, came into the shop, which was always busy and always cramped, and he picks up a dino egg for her. Hands it over, pays quickly, no bag, no need. Lovely, simple transaction. But just as the till drawer closed and I was pulling out his receipt to hand him, I've seen him in the corner of my eye tear open the packaging of his egg, smash open the lovely plastic shell, and take a big shard in his mouth. He begins to chew, turns slowly to me, and only then does he think to ask, "Is this edible?" "No," I gasped. "No, sir, that's not edible. You really shouldn't eat that." The little granddaughter's face sinks further, watching her grandpa spit out bits of plastic into her broken dinosaur egg. A fake dino egg designed to be immersed in water so that the rubbery dino toy on the inside can grow and hatch. I gave him another. Well, I gave it to his granddaughter. Best to keep it away from him. He was clearly ravenous. I'm a cashier at a grocery store, and one time I had a lady ask of me if I could tell everyone else to let her go first. Like, she expected me to force everyone who'd been patiently waiting in line to let her cut in front of them. It wasn't like she only had 1 or 2 items either. Her cart was packed. I also had a lady today ask me, the cashier, if I could run to the back of the store to get her something that she had forgotten, while I had a full line. And I told her no, and she rolled her eyes at me and gave me a dirty look. I guess it doesn't really relate all that well, but she'd rather inconvenience everyone else than take the time to get them herself. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I work in a liquor store whose inventory is 80% wine. You literally have to walk past whole aisles of wine to get to the hard liquor at the back. I was in the Scotch aisle at the back of the store when a customer approached me, looked me dead in the eyes, and asked, "Hey, where do you keep the wine here?" I took a few seconds to react, not sure if he was messing with me or not, but upon inspecting his sincerely frustrated gaze, I arrived at the conclusion that the man was indeed serious and stupid. I responded by simply pointing behind the gentleman and then sweeping my arm from one side to the other like I was showing my lion cub all of the land that would one day be his to rule. Today, a customer asked me if I was the same Harry as the Harry she spoke with yesterday. My name is not Harry, and I wear a name badge at work. I work at a small outdoor restaurant that sells wings and fries. Nothing else, just those two things, as far as food goes. About a week ago, a man walked up to my counter, took a menu, proceeded to read the entire thing in front of me, then put down his menu to ask, "Can I get a cheeseburger combo?" After taking a minute to wipe the WTF expression off my face, and telling him no, we only sold wings and fries, he says, what about a hot dog? Let me get a hot dog. My mind was blown after that conversation. A customer asked me, "Where's the sugar?" "What? I ordered sweet corn. This is just corn." Back when I did tech support, I received a call from a customer with a peculiar keyboard problem. It seemed he was having trouble with the shift key. When he typed a letter with the shift key pressed, it gave him the uppercase letter. But when he typed a number, it didn't do that. Didn't do what? Type the uppercase number. I had to break it to him gently. Working at a call center, asking people to pay their old bills. Naturally, some respond angrily. "So this is what you do all day? You just call people who haven't paid their bills?" "Yes. So if I paid my bills, you'd be out of the job?" "If everyone paid their bills, then theoretically, yes." "Haha, good. You just effed up by telling me that. I'm gonna pay my bills right away. When you're unemployed, then see how you like getting calls about your bills." The futility of eradicating a job that relies on the existence of poor people by making me poor escaped them. The following is a conversation I had 2 months ago. I'd been getting complaint after complaint all day and I was fed up. The customer asked, "What kind of company stops a customer's service because they haven't paid their bill?" "All companies do that," I said. "That's ridiculous. Don't you want me as a customer?" "Well, not if you don't pay your bills." "Well, I'm not paying it." "Then your service remains off and we'll call you and eventually pass it to a debt collection after we completely shut off your service and have you hit with the late charges." "That's fine. You aren't willing to help, obviously." "I'm willing to help, but the solution is you paying your bills." And this cycle went on for a good half an hour until they screamed at me and hung up. Not really a question, but once when I was a deli clerk, a guy came in at 9:59 p.m. and we'd close at 9:30, so we had time to do the dishes, mop, clean slices, things like that. We were supposed to be clocked out by 10 p.m., and I was still mopping the floor, so I was already a bit behind schedule. Guy comes up to the counter and is like, "Excuse me, where's all your food?" I said, "Sorry sir, we close at 9:30. "What?" he exclaims. "You guys should stay open later. Some people have to work late and need to eat, you know." I stared at him for a moment before smiling and saying, "Yeah, I'm sorry sir, I know the feeling." He looked at me very confused, before I'm assuming it registered to him that I was still working, and he walked out in a huff. This was also a bit confusing to me because he's in a grocery store. He's literally surrounded by food, including cold tenders he can heat up in a microwave. I'm a dog groomer, not a tailor. It always confuses me when people ask, "His hair is too short. Can you just let the sides out a bit?" Ah yes, just like you can do with humans when you cut their hair too short. How do some of these people hold down jobs? Then again, using a dog groomer to begin with implies you're a trophy spouse with too much time and money. I worked on a Christmas tree farm over winter break in college. One time I had a lady ask me, "So what are these trees made out of?" I work at Jimmy John's. All Jimmy John's have a sign that says "Free Smells." I had a lady come through the drive-thru one day while me and my manager were running it. She asks about the free smells after her order, and my manager tells her, "Okay, you can pull up." She gets to the window, gets her food, and then proceeds to look through the bag. She eventually looks up, all confused, and asks where her free smells are. My manager jokingly says, "Oh yeah, come inside, and you can smell all you want for free." She then says, "Okay, butthole," and then speeds off. To this day, I have no frickin' clue what she thought would be in that bag. To the people that keep saying she probably thought it was perfume, I understand that people call perfume smells, but why would a fast food service be giving you perfume in any case? Since some people here don't get why all Jimmy John's have that sign, it's because every Jimmy John's bakes their bread fresh every morning and all throughout the day. So the whole store usually smells of fresh-baked bread. My dad used to work at Windsor Castle, built in the 11th century, home to the Queen and nearly 1,000 years old. An American tourist saw a plane flying nearby and walked over to him. "Why did they build it so close to the airport?" Spoke to the tour guide at the lodge I stay at, it's a wild game lodge, and he said he'd been asked, "Do giraffes hunt in packs? If it's October back in the USA, what month is it here?" The lodge is in South Africa. Can't seem to remember any of the others off the top of my head, but those two stuck with me. Here's a couple from my pet store. A customer wanted something for her cat. "Do you have the thing that does that thing?" "No." "Can you describe that thing?" "Well, it's for cats, and cats like it, and they get on it, and does the thing." Okay, what thing?" "You know, cat things." "Move along, please." We also sell male rodents at our store. Their family jewels are often very prominent. "Ma'am, that hamster is having a baby." "Oh, no it's not, it's a boy." "A boy is having a baby?" "No, that's his package." A customer walked into our tiny bike shop jammed packed full of bikes. Bikes are hanging in the window, off the ceilings, on the walls, all over the floor. There's not a square foot of space in the shop that isn't occupied by a bike or various parts of one. This is the bike shop, right? Yes. Do you guys sell bikes or fix them? Both those things. If I bought in my canoe, could you fix it? Is canoe the name of your bike or is it a boat? It's just a canoe for the lake. Do you guys fix those? What? No, we're a bike shop. Oh, okay. I work at an Italian place right now. We call our Italian menu items by Italian names with English descriptions. I get a lot of questions, but I don't mind a hair because I get paid to talk about food. Not too long ago, though, it sort of went slapstick. It's not that they asked a dumb question, but they kept asking it. "Pollo e penne?" "Oh, that's chicken and pasta with..." "Does it have meat in it?" "The chicken pasta?" "Yes, pollo is Italian for chicken." "Can I get the chicken but not the pollo?" "Pollo is just Italian for chicken. If you want chicken, it's really good." "No, I like chicken, but I don't want pollo." And I kind of lost my mind for a split second. Los pollos morronos. Working at a small coffee shop that roasted their own beans and had their own brand. "Do you sell Starbucks here?" "No, Mom, we roast our own coffee." "Well, that's just bad business." "Okay." I used to work at a coffee bean and tea leaf. One early morning, I had a customer order a frappuccino. I responded with, "I'm sorry, we don't serve those here." Startled, the customer looks at me incredulously, then looks around themselves like they're actually seeing where they are for the first time, then looks back at me and says, "This isn't a Starbucks?" As a UPS driver, customers asking, "What's in the package?" "No idea, you ordered it." I work at a hotel. A client walks in. "If I book a room, does it include the bed?" Like, "No, sir, we only provide you with a chair so you can sit down and wait until checkout time." Worked in an AM auto parts store for a while. I got dumb questions all the time, but the one I remember the most is a guy coming in and saying, "I need a sensor for my car." That's it. That's all the info he had. He didn't know what kind of car he drove or what kind of sensor he needed. And he was getting mad at me for not knowing. He wouldn't take no for an answer. Eventually, I just grabbed a random sensor and sold it to him. Never saw him again. I worked as a pharmacy tech in the US. Once had an older customer ask me why medicine was cheaper with insurance than without. He didn't understand the concept of insurance and kept saying, "Oh, that's very odd. I'll have to look into this." It was for a cholesterol medication that's typically $500 for 90 pills. It wasn't a medicine with a dirt-cheap generic brand, unfortunately. "Oh, there are too many to count in my job." "I want phone X. Is that phone X?" Yes, that's phone X." "Are you sure?" I look at the box that displays the image and name of phone X. "Yep, that's phone X." "You're sure?" "I'm positive." "Okay, if you're sure." Another favorite one, the customer says, "I'm looking for a wireless security system. I don't want to deal with cables or Wi-Fi. Will this one work?" "It's wireless, but it does need to connect to a network." "No, it says wireless." "Yes, definitely true. But it does need to connect the hub to a wireless network." "No, you're not being helpful, you're wrong." "All right, have a good one." Another one I hear frequently is the customer saying, "I can't get into my email and this keeps popping up." It's asking for them to sign into their email. "It looks like it's asking you to sign into your email." "It is, it's asking for my password." "Have you tried entering your password?" "Oh, I'll give that a shot." "Why are you watering down my coffee?" says the guy who ordered an iced Americano. I went to dinner once at a Chinese restaurant in Missouri, and a woman at the table next to ours yelled at the waiter, "Where's the other sauce? We're supposed to get sweet and sour sauce, and we only got one of them." What are some recent mutations in humans that most people don't realize? Blue eyes are a very recent development, evolution-wise at least. The mutation didn't appear until about 10,000 years ago. The only one I can think of is that people are now being born without wisdom teeth. They don't serve a purpose other than an excuse for dentists to make more money. I'm one of these. I always thought my rearmost molars were my wisdom teeth, so I went to my dentist once and asked about having them removed before they started to hurt as opposed to after. She looked at my x-rays and said, "Well, you were born without wisdom teeth. Congrats, you're fully evolved." Lactose tolerance. Humans didn't really drink milk past infancy. But when people started herding goats and cows, they started drinking the milk. A lot of people couldn't handle it, but there were always select people that could. So that explains why some people are hereditarily lactose intolerant and some aren't. The gene is still totally random, but like other genes, it can become more prevalent through surviving cheeseheads. Having 4 kidneys. I'm not sure if this is actually a thing, but I've kept seeing mentions of it every now and then, and this article claims a whole 1% of the British population have them, although often with complications involved. If you open your hand with your palm up, touch your pinky and your thumb together, and then bend your wrist upwards, some will see an extra tendon or muscle, and some won't. From what I understand, it's something that we're losing that our ancestors had probably millions of years ago that we no longer need. Stan Lee did a show on people with real-life superhuman abilities. There's some mutations that most people don't realize. Some examples of mutations like this include Dean Karnazes, who doesn't build up lactic acid in his muscles, so he never experiences muscle pain. He has the record for longest distance ever run in one go, 560 kilometers. He only really stopped because he needed to sleep. There was Rajmohan Nair. His skin is extremely resistant to electricity. He can be shocked by 30 times what would normally kill a person, and it's like a 9-volt battery to him. There's Dennis Rogers, pound for pound, strongest man in the world. He has a mutation where the burst strength of his muscles is insanely above and beyond standards. He can roll fry pans, but the thing is, he doesn't even look huge, just standard. The lesser X-Men of the world. It's very cool anyway. I do think there are some physical trade-offs to some of these though, like repetitive strain injury from not feeling lactic acid and running 560 kilometers, or your bones and tissue not being able to support the massive forces your muscles are exerting. I'd be interested if there were any weird injuries in these people's futures. Little toes are getting smaller in humans as the need for them is non-existent. Other than finding furniture in the dark, they're great at that. The ability to sneeze when looking at bright lights. It's like a superpower that only a few of us have. One day, when things seem hopeless, humanity is at its darkest point and the world needs us the most, we, who are so brutally shunned for our differences, will take the burdens of the normal people upon our backs, stand tall and proud and look up at the heavens, and proceed to sneeze because it's a sunny day. The hunter's response. Most people, when they're in cold weather for long periods of time, will have the blood vessels in their extremities constrict. This reduces heat loss by keeping most of the warm blood around your core. If you have the hunter's response, every few hours or so of cold, your blood vessels will open back up again for a few minutes, which will warm up your extremities and help prevent frostbite. It's relatively common in people of European descent. Lactose tolerance into adulthood is pretty recent, I've heard. Pretty much as recent as the wheel. Kind of wild to think about. Crab people. They look like crabs, but talk like people. It's not extremely recent, but many people in Africa who were diagnosed with sickle cell anemia were also found to be immune to malaria. Alcohol dehydrogenase, which helps breaking down alcohol into acetaldehyde, has a much more efficient version in East Asians, meaning they have the potential to hold their liquor better, and a slightly less functional enzyme degrading acetaldehyde. The accumulation of it makes them appear very flushed when they drink. This improved alcohol dehydrogenase allele seems to have been affected by a strong positive selection roughly matching the time when rice culture, and presumably rice alcohol, became common in Asia, between 10,000 to 7,000 years ago. Most people probably already realize this, but our average height is increasing, probably due to selection, i.e. people tend to be more willing to mate with taller people because taller is often assumed to be better. It is believed that until 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, humans could either not see the color blue or couldn't really distinguish it from green. As mentioned, blue eyes are a mutation and have only been around for about 10,000 years, and everyone with blue eyes descends from one specific person. People's grasp on evolution is pretty bad. This group has some laughable examples of terrible understandings of genetics and evolution. Muscle growth. I'm sure the buffest guy 2,000 years ago isn't even close to some of the guys now in both size and testosterone levels. I'm willing to bet nutrition has a bigger role to play in this than genetics. Testosterone levels are actually rapidly dropping. The dry gene developed in the Siberian area just before these people crossed the Bering Strait to the Americas. Now, some East Asians and virtually all Native Americans have dry earwax and sweat very little. Bonus fact, it is a recessive gene, so if you're dry, then that means you're Asian or Native American on both sides. Alright, to reduce some confusion, an individual of any regional or racial population can carry this gene, but that individual is necessarily a descendant of the group of ancient Asians in whom the mutation occurred and who spread from what is now Siberia. Any individual who carries the dry gene is of Native American or East Asian descent, regardless of how far removed that ancestor is. The vast majority of Native Americans carry this gene, and some East Asians still carry it as well. Also, many people are asking about the sweat and earwax thing. People who exhibit the dry phenotype do not sweat profusely, sometimes even when their bodies are very hot, creating lots of heat. Sweat does occur, and rarely it can be profuse. Sweating is not triggered easily. My mum, brother, and I all exhibit the dry phenotype, and none of us have ever really had smelly BO armpits. My dad is only a carrier, and he has wet earwax and he sweats, and he sometimes has smelly armpits, but not very much. So the presence or lack of armpit BO might be a clue if you're not sure if you have the gene. That's just anecdotal, but maybe it's interesting or helpful to some. If you have dry earwax, then it's flaky and crusty or crumbly, and sometimes hard. It's not sticky or moist. It's not like wax anymore. Hope that's helpful. About a third of people, including me, are born without wisdom teeth. We don't need them anymore, so we're gradually phasing them out as a species. The increase in people with nut allergies. Oh, so that's why girls run away from me. No, just to clarify, it isn't fully genetic or environmental, although a lack of exposure does make people who wouldn't have had it get it. But if we just gave everyone tree nuts, some kids would never get used to it and they would die. Wasn't there something like 10 years ago about bone density? A girl in a car accident here in the US led to a big study. She has higher than normal bone density due to some mutation related to the LDL receptor. Sickle cell disease is a blessing or a curse. It has negative drawbacks, but makes you completely immune to the disease that kills millions each year – malaria. Sweat that's slightly more acidic than normal. Okay, so there are supervillains in training now that can, over a process of decades, wipe their sweat on prison bars and very gradually escape the first set of things keeping them inside. Terrifying. Also, I am seeing a lot of the same answers cropping up. I'll try to scatter through the few remaining original mutations, but there are a few thousand answers to skim through here. So if I see a repeated one but with an interesting tidbit attached on, then I'll include that too. I read that some people have a larger spleen that can make them go without oxygen for longer times than other normal humans. I think it was tested, and I could be wrong here, on freedivers and those people who lived for generations freediving for mussels and fish and such. The ability to see the color blue. This is a relatively recent evolutionary trait. Not many creatures can see the color. Birds are one, which is why you see some birds that decorate their nests with blue things they find. It stands out to other birds, and doesn't put them in danger since predators can't see it. This also explains why blue and gray colorblind is somewhat common in people. Since it's a new gene, it's still getting all the kinks worked out, so to speak. Not all people are born with wisdom teeth. Many, like me, are born with them only on one side, and a lucky few are born completely without them. Tetrachromacy. They have a fourth color cone in their eye and can detect variations in color much more precisely than the normal trichromat human eye. Native Tibetan women have a mutation which allows them to carry babies to term in extremely low oxygen conditions. China discovered this when they took over Tibet and started trying to colonize it. When they bought their own Han wives, they had something like a 90% rate of the babies just not making it, while the Tibetan women were fine. 12-year-old girls looking like they're 18. Our brains have been getting smaller since around 30,000 years ago. Only the cerebellum, the area primarily responsible for precise muscle movements, is getting bigger. Mutations are the result of Zinch, foul heresy. Smartphone pinky. Look at your right pinky. Chances are there's a divot from you holding your phone there. People are certainly living longer, not just in terms of lifespan, but they seem to grow old much later than usual. That might just be medicine's fault, though. I don't have a source and I'm on mobile, so take it with a grain of salt, but I heard within the next 400 to 600 years, humans will have poisonous bite. After a quick Google search, it seems that human saliva contains cytokines, which cause irritation but are not venomous in humans. This could be an evolutionary precursor to venom or an antibacterial agent. However, it would take significantly longer than a few hundred years to develop into full-blown venom. The Sherpa's ability to breathe at high altitudes. Obesity. It's an adjustment to our changing environment and socioeconomics. It's not evolution or mutation, though. I mean, fat cells would be. It's our body's ability to store excess food energy in our bodies. It's an evolutionary mechanism that all animals have. It allows for thermal insulation as well as energy storage for when food sources are scarce. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm not sure if it's evolution, but a small amount of people, including me, can control their eustachian tube. I can equalize pressure and hear my own heartbeat by opening them. And if I breathe in quickly through my nose with them open and close them suddenly, I can create a pressure difference that lowers my sensitivity to sounds. Very useful in a loud environment. White skin, blue eyes, blonde hair, lactose tolerance, human immunodeficiency virus, immunity. Why are Europeans so mutated? The phasing out of our appendix. We no longer dine on raw vegetables, fruits, seeds, or grains as a part of our primary diet. The appendix was responsible for the acid created to break down this food supply. Everyone's butthole has gotten progressively wider and wider. Not sure if it counts, but nearsightedness has been shooting way up lately. After effects from everyone staring at those old CRTs for 20 to 30 years before LCD was the main thing would probably be a large amount of those cases. It wasn't until the same time as people were developing blue eyes that people could properly digest dairy from other species other than human after a few months. A third strand of DNA. The stupidity of the newer generations. No, that's just you. I don't know about anyone else, but you know how everyone has those swirly things on their fingers that make fingerprints? I have a sixth one, about halfway in between the bottom of my pinky and my wrist on my right hand. Kinda weird. Some, mind you, very few individuals have developed the ability to merge into the right lane when driving slow. And half of those don't even know how to indicate properly when they change. Now that is a truly remarkable recent evolution. And now we present some first-hand accounts of strange genetic traits. A guy I used to work with was missing the exterior of his right ear. He just had his ear canal flat on his head. It didn't even look that weird. The guy was extremely handsome and he didn't hide it. But his hair would sometimes cover it. He was just as beautiful either way. He was just born like that, and is slightly hearing impaired, but he makes an effort to listen to you and pay attention. Awesome guy all around who jokes that he's lucky he doesn't need glasses. Yet. I met someone who had coloboma. His pupils made his eyes look like those of a snake. A boy I went to elementary school with had webbed hands and feet, and one of his pinkies was much shorter than the others, like about half size. He eventually had surgery to remove the webbing. It worked, but he had scarring on all of his fingers and toes that wasn't particularly comfortable at first. A friend of mine and his dad donated blood together for the first time and got their blood type cards in the mail. Dad had AB blood and son was type O. Now, people with type AB blood, as a rule, can't have children with type O blood. So they might have assumed the worst off the bat, but fortunately they'd done one of those family ancestry tests some time before, and it showed they shared 50% of their DNA and listed them as father and son. So they were confused. One of the tests had to be wrong, right? Wrong. Both blood tests and ancestry tests were both right. Some further testing showed the father had a rare genetic mutation known as CISAB, and people with this mutation can have children with type O blood. My 11-year-old son is a chimera. He absorbed his non-viable twin brother in utero and has 2 sets of DNA. This possibility was discovered by CVS, or chorionic villus sampling, which was recommended to me because my blood test results were abnormal. Postnatal PCR testing confirmed the chimerism. We don't know which cells have which set of DNA. For example, his liver can have his own set of DNA and his skin his twins. He has no outwardly visible signs of chimerism, but is ambidextrous, which is common in human chimeras. Chimerism doesn't cause health problems. If diagnosed, it could cause false negatives in paternity testing. My son just thinks it's cool that he's his own twin. I had a student who had a spider hand, like 8 fingers on the one hand and 4 mirrored. It was cool, but he sucked at typing. I met a guy with 2 pupils in one eye on a train like 6 years ago. My mother had 2.5 kidneys. My son has a genetic mutation that's essentially a mirror image of the mutation that causes some people to feel no pain. Those people have a loss of function mutation. He has a gain of function. So in his case, instead of being able to walk through fire and feel nothing, he feels fire when doing things as minor as putting on socks. His genes, and those of others like him, and the genes of the pain-free cohort, are being studied as targets for a new generation of non-opioid pain medications. He's had a difficult journey for sure, but luckily we found ways to help with environmental controls and other accommodations, and right now he's actually doing really well. I saw a girl born without eyes once. It was under circumstances where asking questions would have been inappropriate, so I still wonder. She seemed otherwise quite normal. 15th chromosome deletion, 9th chromosome duplication. Apparently there are only 25 known cases in the world. It's so rare it doesn't have a name. Completely dependent on 24/7 care and modern medicine to keep her alive. I met her several years ago, and at the time she had survived longer than the average for that condition. In myself and my biological father, we share a mutation that gives us abnormally high bone density. Normally, high bone mass is a feature of some bad medical conditions, but in our case it seems to just genuinely be super dense bones. My best friend can hear dog whistles due to some mutation in her ears. She can make out a conversation across the din and space of a crowded restaurant. The story of 2 girlfriends. One was an albino girl, amazing looking, white hair, skin so white that it was pink due to the blood vessels underneath, eyes so pale they were almost white. She wasn't a nice person after all, but amazing looking. Few years later, had a girlfriend who was born with no fingernails. She was an advanced piano player. Good on her, I say. I knew a kid in school who had 12 fingers. He had an extra fully functioning pinky on each hand. It's interesting that it was definitely a pinky and not some other random finger, and he definitely had 2 pinkies on each hand, not 2 ring fingers and then a pinky. They seemed to work fine and didn't cause him any discomfort. When he showed me his hands, I asked him if the pinkies worked. Sorry, I was also a kid. And he said yes. Then he wiggled all of his fingers and they moved normally. We'd been sitting next to each other for 10 to 15 minutes in art class at the same table, and I didn't even notice his hands because all of his fingers looked normal and had all the knuckles and nails and stuff. He didn't struggle with holding a pencil either. Writing and sketching was as good as you could expect some 10 to 11-year-olds. I hope he grew up to play piano or guitar. I do wonder how some of these pass on to future generations. I guess some are recessive or dominant, so my guess is as good as anyone's. Pretty cool that they were all fully functional digits, though. I wonder if that unlocked any weird functionality. My paternal grandma had violet eyes. They were incredible to look at, and I can only imagine how many men were tripping over themselves when she was a young woman because she had jet black hair. I think she was basically Jennifer of Vengerberg. She was so unique because her mum was Swedish and her dad was German, and I don't think any of her 5 siblings had eyes like that. My brother has a mirror image heart. It's healthy and causes him no issues, but it is on the wrong side. This isn't exactly a mutation, but when my friend was pregnant, she started to notice this lump sort of next to her groin. She was pretty worried about it and showed it to me. It was just a squishy lump, not a cyst or anything. She went to the doctors and had some tests. It turned out to be an ectopic chest tissue, which can apparently form anywhere on a line from the armpits to the groin. I thought this was really cool, and apparently so did her doctor, who called her into the office to discuss her test results, which they normally only do when it's something bad. He asked because he had never seen it and was just curious. Trisomy 13. Born without eyes, with extra toes and missing fingers. The doctors estimated that this person would not make it to their first birthday. They actually died at 13 years, 8 months old. Hypertrichosis, or werewolf syndrome. The man's face was fully covered in hair. A condition called xeroderma pigmentosum, where the person's body is physically incapable of repairing damage caused by sunlight, or UV rays. He was born in October and kept mostly inside a very cloudy part of the world, so it wasn't discovered until he was roughly 6 months old and went to the park for the first time and just got third-degree burns all over his body from just 15 minutes in the sun, literally. It's an incredibly rare disorder with a significantly shortened lifespan. There are multiple versions of the disorder, and he happens to have the worst and the rarest one, which also affects his brain. He has neural degeneration, and they don't fully understand why, but it has something to do with his brain cells also not being able to repair stuff. He also can't ever inhale smoke because his internal tissue can't repair either, so if he does inhale smoke, he gets really significant lung damage and could literally die from it. He has to wear specialist gear made by actual NASA to ever go outside. NASA makes and donates this kind of gear regularly for people who have this disorder. He has to have special tinting on the windows at home and in cars and special air filtration systems and whatnot. He has a permanent one-to-one aide at school so that the adults can watch out for his safety 100% of the time. It's expected he won't make it to his 20th birthday. He'll be lucky if he can make it through high school. When I was a kid, my mum and I were on the tram and she got chatting to the parents of a baby sitting across from us. I was interacting with the baby, playing peekaboo and making faces, but when she copied me putting her hands to her face, I noticed she had 6 fingers on one hand and extra nubs of flesh on the outside of both, next to her little fingers. My mum explained later that she was a polydactyl, and that the nubs of flesh were rudimentary extra fingers that weren't fully developed in the womb. She also said she was glad I hadn't made a fuss about it because although I hadn't noticed, the parents were obviously concerned I'd be grossed out. Then she had to explain why they were worried because I thought she was beautiful and that her condition was fascinating, and I couldn't imagine why anyone would be cruel about it. Now I think about it, that encounter was probably the first inkling that I was interested in childcare. I felt such an intense desire to look after that baby and any other that might be treated badly because of a disability or difference. My brother has iris columba. Basically, one of his irises look like it's leaking out of his eye. It doesn't affect his vision at all. I worked with a woman years ago who was born without one or both thumbs. I can't remember. Anyway, they rotated her index fingers around to function as thumbs when she was a baby. She said her grandmother had the same condition and always felt so guilty that she had passed it on. When did a nosy parent regret seeing what their teenager got up to? My son has a towel for a specific private purpose, and it needs to be washed. Ugh. My mum found my rear end plug tail on the bathroom counter. I'd washed it and forgotten it there. She was crying laughing as she just threw it at me. Well, at least you washed it. As a kid, it seemed like no matter where you hid stuff, your mother would find it. I had a nice stash of adult mags when I was a young teen and decided I would hide them in one of my guitar cases. Actually, behind the guitar. My mother would have had absolutely no reason whatsoever to open one of those. She still found them and acted like she wasn't looking for anything. I raised a daughter as a single father, and I am not a natural snoop. I try not to be too nosy. The worst part for me was having her around my mum. My mum is nosy. She's more nosy than any 5 people I've ever met. My mum was left alone in my house with just the dog when my daughter was 15. My daughter is now in her mid-20s, and I still haven't heard the last from my own mother about my daughter having 3 different vibrating toys and therefore being some kind of sick prevert. She hasn't lived at home since she left for college at 18, and I'm still hearing about it from my mum. My mum walking in on me doing a 2-handed lubricated pickle tickle. The headphones I had on were loud enough to block out the door opening sound, but not her scream. I should probably mention it was also her lubricant. I love that her reaction was to scream. Why wouldn't she just let out a sigh and close the door? That's what I'd do. When we moved house and all of the stuff was in the new place, one of the moving guys called me out to double-check the receipt, and when we were out of my mum's earshot and eyeline, he handed me the green herb pipe that had fallen out of the hidey hole in the back of my desk when they were moving it. What a bro. I found a doo-doo-covered, eggplant-shaped adult toy hidden in the now unused floor vent in the bathroom. I lived with my mum and 4 younger brothers. It doesn't matter whose it was, I'm still wishing I'd never seen that. I think I would prefer to believe that one of my brothers was gay or straight and liked butt stuff and was just also kind of a slob, than believe that my mum had really just given up on household hygiene to that level. No matter who it was, I'm unhappy for everyone with that decision though. The lack of hygiene, the lack of discretion, and the disrespect to the bathroom. Gross. I had a Dragon brand, eggplant-sized adult toy in a specially made container that looked like a pillow. My mum still found it. I'm a guy, she's Mormon. That was an intense conversation. I'm not a parent, but a snooping child. I found a box of my mum's toys and lubricant. In a different drawer, I found a photo of my dad undressed in the shower. My dad had died several years prior to my snooping discovery. The only time my mum ever searched my computer history was 10 minutes after I'd Googled what queefs were. I was playing a game of Scrabble with my mum and a friend, and one of us played that same word. We then got the pleasure of explaining what it was to my mum. She was so excited about the new word, she went to work that night and made sure everyone else knew it too. My dad once found a prawn-to-graphic image, as in a huge eggplant in a girl's butt, canine style, as my desktop wallpaper because I thought it would be better to crank it that way. Oh. My mum cleaned my room, totally not to snoop or anything, and found my toys when I was 18. Serves her right. The toys were really well hidden. She had to dig to find those things. I think what we can take away most is that there are no parents writing on their accounts here. It's just a bunch of teenagers caught whacking the mule in some way. This happened a couple of years ago when I still lived with my mum and stepdad. My stepsister used to live in my room, and it had been nearly a year since she moved out. I had a vibrating toy that my best friend had bought me as a joke, but not really a joke, for a birthday gift. I used it frequently and would hide it in the bottom of a drawer in my closet, hidden in a hat. And my mum decided to snoop and found it, but somehow thought it was my stepsister's and kept it. I asked her about it, and she was blown away by the fact that sometimes I liked to have fun with myself, but she was going to send the toy in the mail back to my sister without telling her. Now, that would have been a hilarious disaster. In short, my mum almost sent my toy to my sister in the mail. Oh, update. I texted her about it and she had the typical response like, "Not my daughter." And yes, I did get it back, but I soon threw it out because the thought of my mum knowing that I used it was too much. I have a younger brother. I went to his room to search something up on the internet and he had left his tabs open. Apparently he likes wincest, although I wouldn't say there was anything winning about that. My 12-year-old stepson's group chat on his iPhone, entitled "Sarah Suck Big," well, you know where this is going. I was cleaning my 7-year-old's room because it was a frickin' mess and I was sick of it. I found a collection of apple cores, orange peels, and candy wrappers stashed under the bed. Some had been there for far too long. Back in high school, my friend Allie's house was right next to our campus. I wasn't allowed to go hang out after school, though. No boys were, unless her mother was home. Why? Because her mum had walked in on Allie going south of the border on a guy in the basement one day. The only reason I actually know this story is because one day I was there with parental supervision, and when Mum has to leave for errands, she said, "Well, I wish I could leave you guys here alone, but I guess Allie really blew that chance." I have never seen a teenager turn that red. I was a preteen at the time the internet was starting to get going. My parents saw my search history after I became confused how doing the deed worked in a gay relationship, and I Googled it. That led to some interesting questions. Not a parent, but when my brother was 7, he was complaining of my mum's PC running slowly. Out of curiosity, I checked history in case he downloaded any viruses. Minecraft adult films were multiple of the searches. Yeah, I wish I was kidding. So I have a bunch of weird sleep issues, and one of them is the ability to hold conversations with people while I'm in a deep sleep. I have no memory of the conversations. My mum found out about this when I was a teenager, and apparently she'd sneak into my room in the middle of the night, and Sleep Me would just dish out all the hot goss. Who was having a party, who I liked, which of my friends made bad life choices, everything. She'd never punish me for it, but would give me advice based on what Sleep Me confessed. It always confused me on how much she knew about my life. When I'm extra tired or stressed, this does come back, and apparently I've had hilarious conversations with my husband. I've just recently discovered that I've passed this trait down to my son. Part of me is tempted to get the scoop from my kid, but another part of me wants to respect his personal space. I'm a parent, so one weekend my wife and I are chilling out in bed watching whatever garbage on TV, when our youngest son, of 11, comes in and says his older brother, 13, is looking at prawn topography on his tablet. So we call for the eldest son. He denies and denies, of course, so we tell him to bring me his tablet. He hasn't learned the art of incognito browsing or clearing history completely. Going through his history, well, I'll be damned, he is looking at some wild prawns. Not just your regular crustaceans, though. There's some anime stuff, some real adult raunchy stuff, but the real kicker here was the Scooby-Doo shellfish. Fred railing Velma, Shaggy taking Daphne to town, Velma whipping out the old scissors with Daphne. So, Mum leaves the room to let Dad and his son talk about this. It starts with the usual, don't lie, you can't hide this stuff from me if I go through your browsing history, it's okay to tickle your pickle, in private of course, you're growing up, yada yada yada. And then I finish the conversation, give him his tablet back, but as he's walking out the door, I can't help but do my best Scooby-Doo impression. But Raggy, followed by zoinks, jinkies, and ruh-roh, found your prawns. His face got so red and I just lost it. I was in tears. Now, every so often, when he starts to cop an attitude with us, I just go zoinks to him. Kicker of it all, the youngest son comes into the room later with, I was only joking, I didn't really know he really was doing that. Classic younger brother behavior, to be honest. Oh my god, and you, Dad? Ruh-roh, Raggy. Well, at least you managed to turn what would have been a traumatizing experience for both of you into one that was completely one-sided and only scarred your son for life. Well done, Dad. My son's Japanese tentacular spectacular cartoon whoopee collection. I need eye bleach. Not a parent, but a witness to their finding something they didn't want to see. I work IT. A guy had his adult daughter's computer that was having issues opening some photo application and needed it fixed. As we were going through and checking if it worked yet, I opened up the app and presented an image of his daughter undressed holding a big old marital aid. No words were exchanged. He closed the lid and left. I once found a sock that would not only stand on its own, but could be used to prop a window open. I would have sat the kid down for a conversation, but I don't have kids. I also have an uneven number of socks now. Ugh. My daughter's boyfriend left his contraceptive wrappers in her bathroom trash can, twice. It was a Magnum, both times. I'm very glad they're using double protection. She's also on birth control and they were both virgins. But gosh darn, I hate this. I was taking out her trash, dumping the small trash can into the large bag as one is wont to do in the house with 4 frickin' women. Well, at least he's got a Magnum dong. I was helping my recently turned teen cousin with a PC problem. I know his dad has some controls set, so I did a little snooping to see how effective they were. Apparently the kids discovered Futanari and the regular tentacly Asian stuff. He likes the classics. Black Bible was searched for a lot. I didn't tell his dad, but I did Purell the F out of my hands. Parents, why do you feel the need to go through your teen's stuff? My mum always went through my stuff. I never had anything to hide, but it always made me feel untrusted, and it made me feel the need to hide stuff from her in the first place. Even if it was something small like a date or a birthday card from a friend. Just let your teens have a safe place in their room where they can keep stuff that they feel is private. If you have any worries about substances or other things, be honest and open with them. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was 16, I had green herb duct taped to the ceiling of my blocked-off air vent in my room, inside a smell-proof case, and my mum still managed to find it. She searched the frickin' air vents. Protection wrapper in the downstairs trash, rolled up inside a potato chip bag. Found it. Lighter tucked underneath the seat in my car. Found it. Plastic bag full of empty beer cans that I hid at the bottom of our outdoor trash can. Found that. She loves me, but she was nosy as F and always on my case because she came from a very well-to-do family. Imagine how psyched she was when I came home on leave for the first time with a tattoo and a nicotine habit. My mum found a thing saying I was bi and confronted me while crying about it and begging me to tell her why I'd turned away from God. 6 years later and I'm still so far in the closet I may as well rule Narnia. Also, she found my Yowie stash when I was a frickin' weeb. On my 16th birthday, my girlfriend at the time was over and we were in my room watching a movie, just chillin'. I went downstairs at a point during the night to leave the girlfriend in the room to get a drink of water. Whilst down the stairs, my mum asks me if I had any laundry to be done. This wouldn't be strange for most 16-year-old guys, but I'd been doing my own laundry since I was 14 due to my parents regularly being away for days at a time for work. I was confused, but just replied, "No, I did some yesterday. I'm checking anyway." So she did. I got my glass of water, and one for the girlfriend, and started my path back to my room when 2 shrill screams came from that direction. I ran to the door, and my mother storms out, eyes on the ground, and grumbles, "I'm never going into your fricking room again." I enter the room, perplexed, only to find my girlfriend wrapped in a bedsheet on the bed, her clothes strewn on the ground. She had been sat on the edge of the bed with nothing on whatsoever when my mum walked in. The night was ruined, and my mother never entered my room again. I'm sure she regrets being such a nosy fool. You know the word flashlight? Well, replace the letter A in that word with an E in the next sentence. I found a small bag of green herb stuffed in the bottom of his flashlight. A friend of mine once set the homepage on his dad's work computer to a prawn site. You know, those viruses that automatically set themselves. His dad got greeted with a large woman enjoying a zucchini in a very unconventional way next time he opened his browser at work. He was not pleased, but the IT guy who had to take care of it must have had a good laugh. To clarify, my friend did it accidentally. He actually removed the Internet Explorer shortcut to try to hide it. Neither of my parents seem to be nosy, but I have had some interesting moments. Like at one point, my dad wanted me to look at something on the web and saw I had Medina Arabic on the bookmark tab, and naturally his first response was, "Are you trying to join the terror fighters?" I'm just really into languages, something that apparently my family finds really weird. My stepdad tracks not only my phone but also my bank account, so almost everything. He tried to track what I do on the computer, but I'm more tech-savvy than he is. I'm pretty sure my mum wasn't too happy finding my stash of diapers. She did know about it, but I still got looks after she clearly went through my room for who knows what reason. I wish I hadn't found my own teenage diary hidden in my teenage daughter's room. I'm always terrified that my parents will go through the various papers I have in my room and find the tests that I didn't do as well as they would have wanted me to do. Went to take a whiz in a stall at school, found a cell phone on the TP dispenser. It didn't have a lock screen. I thought I'd search in the contacts for someone the owner spoke to regularly, like mum or whoever, to send them a text, like "found your son's phone. It'll be with campus security." As soon as I swiped to unlock, it opened to a Google image search for Randy she-mails. I wiped the browser history, turned it into security, and went about my day like nothing had happened. It was at that moment that I realized how numb I was to odd stuff. I mean, I feel like you could have still sent a message saying it was with security, but then I guess you just wanted to eradicate any chance of ever having to run into anyone who had anything to do with the things you saw on that device. Oh well. I wish my mother hadn't found the letters, located in a hidden drawer from my first girlfriend. Getting home one day to find my mother standing there proclaiming my girlfriend to be an utter harlot was more insight into my life than I wanted her to have. In fairness to my mother, her judgment was spot on, but at the same time she had failed to realize that was why I liked her. Daughter had a phone issue. I looked at the search history on the browser and regretted everything. When I was in the 9th grade one Saturday morning, I'd gotten up at like 7:30 a.m. and went into the computer room and was no joke just watching porno. A black guy and a white girl, and my dad came in while I was just watching it. It was awful. Okay, but what about the reverse, because I found my mum's vibrating toy, bubbler, and stash of green herb that she apparently grew in our backyard. Look, I wasn't even being nosy, okay? Our family shares an Apple Cloud account, and when looking through apps that people had downloaded, I found one about different bedroom positions. My oldest kid at the time was around 12. Another reverse situation. I found an uncomfortably large, vibrating toy in my mum's room once when I was looking for candy, which she often hoarded. Oh, and it wasn't the cheap kind of toy either. They didn't spare any realism when they made that thing. Even worse, I thought it was a flashlight. You can imagine my surprise when the flashlight had veins, but of course, the most traumatizing part was when I pressed the button and instead of illuminating the drawer, it vibrated intensely. Took me half an hour to find out how to turn it off. My piece of crap brother-in-law would try to catch me doing stuff. My sister is much older than me, so I'd stay with them sometimes in the summer when I was a kid. He showed me his new computer and then said, "Don't give anyone my AOL password," and just left me alone for a day while I worked. I was 12 years old with free reign to the internet. He came home with a preverted grin on his fat face. "Did you know that I can see what websites you've been to today?" "Oh, I can." He sat down at his computer, fired up the history with a glint in his dead, piggy eyes, and, well, he saw 12 hours of me doing two things: reading about Animorphs and Star Trek, and chatting about Animorphs and Star Trek. I snooped on my kid's Reddit account. He has more karma than I do. Grr. I caught my 7-year-old watching adult flicks on his tablet. Electronics were taken, the birds and the bees talk was had. Not a parent, but my mum taught me how to wash my clothes at 6. She honestly hated doing the laundry that much. For my birthday once, I turned down her offer of $100 in exchange for doing my own laundry and told her to just instead keep doing mine, adding that it didn't appeal to me that much. She still wouldn't do it and left the Benjamin in my coat pocket. Being a late bloomer, I took home a girl to meet my parents and did the deed for the first time at 21 in their basement, as many young men do. Not wanting her to find the contraceptive in the garbage can, I emptied the rubber and pocketed it. I then changed clothes so I wouldn't smell like one does after a sweaty roll on the downstairs carpet, and, well, you guessed it, 90 minutes later I see my mum folding my clothes. I say, "You're doing my laundry. For the first time in 15 years. And of course you checked the pockets, didn't you?" She folded quietly, looking down, and said, "Yes, Paul, I found the Johnny. 8 years ago, and that was, and likely always will be, the last time my mother did my laundry." Not me, but my family friend was looking through her daughter's phone without her permission. 2 minutes after I told her that she shouldn't do that, she found out her daughter had been on a lesbian chat site and burst into tears. Should have minded her own damn business. Parent here, it's not what I found, but what I didn't find. All of my son's friends are a couple of years older than him. A few years ago, every one of them got busted with pornography except mine. All the parents, myself included, joke that he's probably the one that introduced them to it. He's just better at hiding it. That, and I don't search his internet history. In high school, I bought a pipe for the smoking of ye old wacky tobacco. It went missing days afterwards, so naturally I was panicked. I searched the house top to bottom and asked my brother, who was 12, if he had it. His answer was no, and it sent me into a panicked loop of searching the house and re-asking my brother. I'd written it off until a month later when I heard a commotion from my brother's room. My father found the pipe and my brother claimed it was mine. My father stormed down the hall and woke me up with the "Is this your hash pipe?" spiel. I had to stifle a laugh, first time I'd even heard the word hash used as a substance name, and told him, "Nope, never seen that before." He went down the hall and proceeded to kick the crap out of my brother for smoking and lying. Still to this day, I have a smile on my face telling this story. Worst part is, I don't think he ever got to smoke anything out of that pipe, he just liked stealing things. I found a $100 bill in my daughter's jacket pocket. She was 3 at the time. I did find gay adult images in a rectory, that place where Catholic priests live. My Boy Scout troop was connected to my church, and our priest, who's a stand-up guy, asked us to clean out some of the spare bedrooms that weren't occupied anymore. This place was a frickin' mansion, so they needed all the free labor they could get with cleaning. Digging through one of the closets there, I happened upon a metric crap ton of gay prawns. They weren't magazines though, they were slides, like old-school slides for a Kodak carousel projector. Me, being a naive but not ignorant of how messed up the church is, 12-year-old at the time, I thought that there could be potentially some less than legal crustaceans in the mix. So I stupidly took it upon myself to look at every single slide to make sure I didn't have to go to the police. I tossed that crap in a dumpster and never mentioned it again. What's life like as a guy who pretends to be female online, or vice versa? About a decade ago, I was on a dating site without much luck and getting very few replies to messages, so I thought the best way to get tips on what not to do was sign up a fake profile as a woman and see what kind of messages were sent and just not do anything that appeared more than once. Hello folks, just to shut down a certain set of debates early on, this video is about male-identifying individuals who knowingly present a misleading personality online in order to pursue or obtain something. This is, and I can't stress this enough, not any sort of commentary or criticism on trans people. You'd hope I wouldn't have to say that, but you never know on the internet. Okay, on with the video. When I was at university, we were doing a project on communities and online communities. Our group got assigned to look into and research Second Life, as at the time it was still quite new and a current thing, and as I was the one with the best laptop, I got the job of playing it. We drafted some questions we'd try and answer, and some kind of short surveys people could answer for data for our presentation at the end, and I made a male character that looked like me and jumped on in. After visiting a few social hubs and numerous attempts and hours, not one person would really help out, or they wouldn't give us much more than stupid answers. One of the people in our group thought it was just me and came and watched and realized people were kind of unhelpful towards us. So we re-rolled my character as a female. Tall, slim, blonde, and acted a bit more like a video game noob. We got more help almost instantly than I'd got in hours. People would even see us talking to someone and then come on over to volunteer their answers and opinions as well out of the blue. Asking if we needed things, showing us places to go. One guy bought us some outfits and gave us some in-game currency and let us have access to his house. So, yeah, we pretended to be a female to get a project done. This is only topic adjacent. I have a female-sounding summoner name on League of Legends. I'm a support main, and I'm usually pretty positive as well. I never received any sort of gift from a rando. I have had tons of people ask me if I'm a girl though, almost always followed by, "I knew it," or them telling me they've got a bet going with a friend. Overall, playing Halo 3 online with a mic back in the day was substantially worse. The top questions I got were, "Are you fat?" or "Are you hot?" or "What's your Facebook?" Always followed by excessive crouching on my head upon death. I pretend to be female online when I publish light romance. In the United States, when I first started writing romance, I got an unpleasant amount of attention as a male author in the genre, and found it a lot safer for me to write under a female pen name. Then people read and enjoyed the stories, but didn't get creepy and stalk me. This makes sense. I was in a book club back in college, and we had a few Nicholas Sparks books in our lineup, and many of the girls in the group were absolutely swooning over him. They believed that the perfect romantic male leads were manifestations of the author. It doesn't help that Mr. Sparks is handsome as well. We ended up going to his book signing in a nearby city as a book club event. Pretty normal, but then a few of the girls followed him into surrounding states to try and attend more signings, and were getting a little obsessive. One girl was actively, but as far as I know unsuccessfully, trying to find out which hotels he was staying at during his tour. Straight up crazy. Had to do it once as an exercise in a computer crimes class. We made our accounts as teenage girls for a chat room. Within 5 to 10 minutes, there were guys messaging you to turn your camera on, blah blah blah, and they'd pop up, eggplant out, and just try to crank something out to you after you told them that you're female. I had a guy from India willing to pay for my flight over that day to meet him. Then we told him we weren't really a teen girl and that their information would be turned over to the police. Good times. Yep, it does exist, and this isn't some sort of internet points fake story. I'd just gotten a new keyboard attachment for my PlayStation 3 controller and wanted to test it out, so I jumped on PlayStation Home and walked around and chatted with people. My avatar was an attractive woman, I should point out. So anyways, I walked into this bowling alley and sat down next to this random guy and struck up a conversation with him. Nothing crazy, just chatting. I really liked this new keyboard. Anyways, in the middle of our conversation, some other player in a singlet walks over and starts to hit on me. I should point out that at no point had I said I was a girl, I just had a girl avatar. This new guy starts saying some pretty lewd things, and the person I was chatting with literally gets out of the chair and gets in this guy's face telling him to get lost and the lady is taken. It was so absurd to see this person about to fight in a video game over a fictional female, I just couldn't stop laughing. After the new guy walked away, I jokingly decided to play the female part. I thank this player for saving me from that jerk, and it's so annoying to be hit on by creeps like that all the time. We talked for about an hour, and in this short time span he started to reveal more personal things about himself. He talked about how he didn't have much luck with women and how he wasn't able to last long in bed. As the conversation went on, it got more and more sad and I began to feel sorry for this person, so I said I had to go and logged off for the night. I logged onto my PlayStation the next day and was greeted with a bunch of messages from this player asking where I'd been and if I wanted to join him on PlayStation Home again. I felt a bit creeped out by the sheer amount of messages, so I ignored them and played some other game. This went on for several days, and after a while I got tired of being spammed and replied to this person, pretending to be her brother, and told him my sister was using my PlayStation just for that one night, and she went back to college and wouldn't be home for a few weeks, but I'd tell her he was asking about her. He stopped bothering me after that, but it really put into perspective what some women have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. In short, I tried to test out my new keyboard in a game and ended up getting a whole bunch of clingy messages for several days. Back in the day when I still played online poker, I used to pose as a girl because male players often wouldn't take them as seriously, especially if you play tight aggressive. Anything helps to get an edge, you know? The change in the player's general behavior was very noticeable. A lot of flirting all of a sudden. Of course, not from the majority, but still. It gave me a glimpse into how aggravating things can be for women sometimes. I've played too many male characters, and I do it for the role-playing. I'd pretend to be an 11-year-old girl on Omegle, and when people hit on me, I gave them my phone number. which was the phone number of their nearest FBI office. I can't imagine anything actually comes from this, but that's got to be a hilarious few moments, right? Calling the number. Thank you for calling the North Central Regional Headquarters for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Please listen to the following. Click. Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap! I did it for the same reason most in the early 2000s did. To get free stuff on RuneScape. Thanks for the gold, but I'll need a little more if you want me to be your girlfriend. Hahaha, this is a rumored trick as old as the narrator. Fun times. I do genuinely remember all of my male classmates going on about this in school. I wonder if it's still true, what with the recent resurgence of the game. It probably is, but to like a lesser degree, right? You know, at first I did this out of boredom and curiosity. Eventually, I transitioned into feeding my creative writing imagination. I was 13 to 16 years old, I think it was 2004 through 2007 back in the day, where it was fairly common to have online gaming buddies, and there weren't really things like Skype or Discord or webcam to immediately blow your cover. It started on an older game called Gunbound or MapleStory. I had a steady group of friends who played, and I just wanted to see how adding a girl into the mix would change them. So I made a fake account, and I would accidentally join their game and play with them, flirt with them, stuff like that. I think it took less than 4 games before all 3 of them added me and started to have private messages. I'll admit, back then I thought it was fun as heck, and I don't know if it was catfishing or trolling. I just saw it as a form of entertainment, and it made my friends happy. I went so far as double logging in as both myself and the female, and introducing myself to myself just so they wouldn't get suspicious. Like I thought maybe they'd realize that I was never on when she was on. That kind of thing. It went on for about 3 years, give or take a couple of months, and they never found out that I had fun with all of them, and they had thoroughly seemed to enjoy my company as the girl. I even made another account as that girl's friend, which really sealed the deal on any doubt they were having about her. I never told any of them about it in the end. It went way too far once they started confessing their feelings and future plans of meeting up when we all turned 18, and all that stuff is when I knew I had to end the whole thing. I told them that she was moving to live with her grandparents overseas and that her life would be changing. I logged on as her less frequently until it got to the point where she was just too busy to continue playing with us. The most awkward or guilt-inducing part was how sad they all were for like weeks and weeks after she finally disappeared. It was fun up until that point, where I kind of realized I just really broke the hearts of 3 of my closest internet buddies. I don't really talk to any of them anymore, but looking back, it was a pretty messed up thing that I did. I learned a lot about myself and my friends, and just how guys react in general to girls online. Please, other 13-year-olds, don't do what I did. I pretended to be a girl so I could join a clan of girl gamers on Call of Duty. It's not like I went to great lengths, but I did it because they were, and have been, far better teammates and allies than the game will ever give me naturally. No regrets. Didn't they hear you talk and realize you were male? If the Girl Gamers Reddit is any indication, they won't give a crap as long as he's not being weird. Most women who game just want to have a good time without being treated differently for being women. The girl-only spots are more for keeping a positive, accepting environment. They can be just as much fun as tolerant guy groups as long as you don't mind the occasional bit of girl talk or period jokes. I did it to see the female character model in RuneScape. I'd already had a dude character and I wanted a second one. I created one, logged in, wandered around, and some guy offered to make me full leather armor for free. After that, he wanted me to follow him to do some quests. When we got that far away from anyone else, he said he wanted to cyber with me, and I promptly logged the F out and never played that character again. I was like 12 years old. I was on a dating app to assess my competition. I once did this online. I was bored as heck and I wanted to see the extent that guys were willing to go to. I got like $300 for a picture of me. It was fake, but he still sent it. I refunded him and told him. He got real mad. It was funny as hell. Not sure if this counts as pretending, but I prefer to pick female characters in Momorpicas because I want to cross-dress in real life, but I'm too shy. I decided it's the best way to get good interactions with players in chat on Overwatch, so I'll just act like a girl in chat, good luck, have fun, kissy face, and stuff like that while I pick Mercy and play well, and they don't blame me for the loss from their crappy positioning. As a girl who's actually decent at certain video games, reading this actually makes me feel slightly salty. As soon as I'm on my mic, people treat me like some scrub. Either that or I get the white knight treatment. Ugh. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I did this once, and believe me, it was both informative and funny. My main reasons for trying to do so were to understand the psychology of girls by imitating it, and to understand the behavior of men from a girl's point of view. And this is what I learned during the process. First, boys go to any length to send their undressed photos. They want your Facebook, Kik Messenger, and phone number instantly. Like, really? Don't you have any respect for privacy? Then when you start seeing from girls' perspective, you really start understanding them and their problems. You challenge your views and beliefs, and you begin to judge yourself based on your prior interactions with women. Oh boy, I hope my girlfriend never finds out. The game was RuneScape. At first, it was just a joke. However, after some years, I really grew into the character. I'd created a name, personality, life. My alternate life was just very much a reality to the people I played with. I learned a lot about human interaction and how people treat women differently. It helped me understand women a bit better as far as perspective, even if it was just through a game world behind the protection of a computer screen. In fact, playing RuneScape as a female character taught me how to socialize and adapt to real people. In turn, this has greatly built my interviewing skills to a point where I've landed myself a pretty prestigious position. In short, I'm a straight male, I played as a female in RuneScape. I learned human interaction. RuneScape is the reason for my social ability and success. A kid we went to high school with claimed he met a girl at a hockey tournament. I played on his team, and he did not. And he said they were dating and they were constantly doing the deed. She then added all of us on MySpace and MSN and would constantly talk to us. She was around until she was invited to a party, and then she mysteriously disappeared. Every time. We all know it was you, Rob, especially since her pictures were all pictures of some girl from Google. Okay, I wonder how many catfishes have pictures that come up at the top of your results if you just Google hot girl pictures. Maybe that's what you should do when you start pursuing people online, folks. Or better yet, just don't pursue them. Just let them do whatever they're doing on the site. Alright, my time to shine. I usually play female characters in online games because, well, I don't know, I guess because I like to dress them up. Not in a pervy way, guys. I don't get to have that fun in real life as a guy. Also, I'm not really interested in real life in makeup or clothes, but I do enjoy being able to show off cool outfits and mix and match my character's hairstyle, color, skin tone, shirts, skirts. And in most games on male characters, you don't have as much freedom. I'm currently playing Guild Wars 2, also called Fashion Wars 2, and I absolutely love the way my second main character has turned out. With the color palette and set style, I've matched multiple pieces on different sets. Do I pretend to be an actual girl online? Not anymore, but I used to. When I was 14, I used to play a game called Fliff, and I made female characters back then too, until something unpleasant happened that made me stop pretending to be a girl. It's something that I feel ashamed about even now, 10 years later. You see, I had this female support character, and one day I met a guy. He asked me if I was a girl in real life, and I said yes, just on a whim. He then started courting me. It turns out this guy was some super rich dude from Belgium who used to spend a lot, and we're talking like 300 to 400 euros every week, of money in the game's cash shop. For all of the people who don't know what Fliff is, well, it was a game where having cash shop money meant you were way better, stronger, and richer than anybody else in the game. This guy started gifting me stuff from the cash shop, and one day asked, "Do you want to be my GF?" I had no idea what it meant to have a GF in a video game. I still don't really understand, but I just said yes because I was a bag of crap. Whatever, free money, right? He became really attached to me. I was supposed to only play with him as his support partner. I wasn't supposed to play with other people. He then started asking me personal questions related to real life, and sometimes I replied truthfully, like where I was from. Idiot. And some other times I just skirted around the issue, like when he asked for my phone number, picture, or Skype or MSN. This went on for like 6 or 7 months. I had a real-life friend who played the game with me who knew about it, and we kind of laughed about it, but deep down I was getting a bit creeped out. Then one day the guy said he'd be visiting Italy in a month's time or so, and he wanted to meet up. Keep in mind, I told him I was a 15-year-old girl. Creepy as F. This guy was like a manager or vice president of a company in Belgium. He was at least 30. That's when I seriously got grossed out and realized it had to stop. We both were playing the same class in the game, but I was support and he was a DPS kind of character, so our equipments were completely different, and yet compatible. So one day I asked him, "Hey, did you know I never tried soloing a boss on my own? Since I'm support, I wanted to try it out at least once. Could you trade me your weapon and shield so I don't die and help me heal while I solo this boss? You know where this is going, but bear with me. The guy was so rich that his weapon, and especially his shield, were like the only ones of that kind in the whole server. More or less. Let's say that there were a total of 6 or 7 in the whole game at that point in time, and he had both of these things. They were pretty much priceless and worth in the ballpark of thousands of euros in cash shop money each, just to trade them around. Anyway, the guy was completely clueless, and he traded them with me. That's when I said something like, oh crap, I'm lagging, and I put myself invisible in the chat, and just logged out. I made a new account and started from scratch, and I didn't touch that other account for at least a week or so. Once I felt comfortable with that, I logged back onto my old account and traded all the stuff on it to my real-life friend, with the threat of me killing him if he tried to scam me, since I knew where he lived. The plan was that he'd trade it to my other character. My mailbox was full of flames from the guy's whole guild and everything. They were mad, and I guess rightfully so from their perspective. I saw that guy again one day, just sitting in the middle of the square, doing nothing, being away from keyboard, with still a lot of money and fancy pets and weapons and everything. I felt pretty bad for him. I realized I was a real crapbag for doing what I did, and I felt ashamed of myself. I promised myself I'd never do it again, and as I said, years later I do still cringe about it. That poor guy, regardless of how creepy and borderline illegal he was, he got scammed out of thousands of euros of in-game items and a promise of an underage girlfriend. Ugh. And this is now the story of why I make it clear I'm a guy every time I play a female character online nowadays. I mean, he was hitting on what he thought was a 15-year-old girl. Don't beat yourself up about it too much. I publish under a pseudonym, and figured if I'm going to fake a name, I might as well fake some other details. Interestingly enough, I don't change any behavior or anything, and it flies just fine. It's been covered a fair bit in some of these other comments, but people treat women much differently online. And now I've experienced it firsthand. I've had people online fall for me, I've had people treat me as less capable for my assumed gender, I've had people act unusually nice to me and then act less so to others in a group. It's all pretty weird. Now, unlike gaming, the whole publishing under a different gender thing does potentially have some fallout when people find out one way or the other if you make it big. It probably shouldn't matter, but I imagine that some people who felt a camaraderie or personal affiliation with the author's pseudonym might be somewhat put off by the truth. I'll be interested to see if that's happened in the past. I'm a woman who pretends to play a guy online. Does that count? I'll actually give you a serious answer. So, I was raised by a single mum. When I was a teenager, she had a bit of a midlife crisis and for a while was never home in the evenings. I'm not blaming her, I was 15, it was fine. Anyway, I spent my time playing crappy MMOs. RuneScape, Ion, the usual suspects. I was also really active and semi-popular member on Rune HQ. Damn, this is a part of my life I'd never thought I'd revisit, actually. Anyway, I catfished so many girls. I had 30-year-olds on Ion sending me pictures and asking for them in return. There was this girl in RHQ who fell for me hard and told me a bunch of really personal stuff. Why? Because I'm really frickin' gay and I couldn't admit it, and on the internet I could flirt with girls with no repercussions. I feel bad for any woman who took me seriously, but I was a kid with no supervision undergoing an identity crisis. Don't do what I did. Honestly, I have 2 older sisters and I was the youngest for 5 years. When writing, my story's characters always seemed really feminine, even if I tried to make them male. I guess it's easier to appear as what people expect a female to be or act like, because I can relate more to them and I understand women more than men. I'm still 100% a straight guy though. It was 2005 and I'd just learned about RuneScape. I played as a male character for a while, always asking for a girlfriend until one day I found one. I knew almost nothing about her but gave her sets of armor like adamant. I learned quickly that she was a guy and that I had been scammed. I was always someone who enjoyed abusing glitches in games, either for profit or fun, and I found a YouTuber who made glitch videos and reached out to him. I was ignored time and time again. So I made a female character. In almost no time, I had a different boyfriend. He would give me so much stuff, even his account in the end. I then used that account to pursue the YouTuber as a female. And he took the bait. As a prepubescent boy, my voice was high enough to replicate being a female. Him and I talked for a long time. I'm talking 3 years. He fell in love with me. I was in too deep. I didn't know what to do, so I kept up the facade. I really felt like I did love him too, but only through his persona. We'd stay up on Skype for hours, laughing about things, planning a future, prank calling. That all ended when he hacked my PayPal account, found out my name and address, and began ruining my life. It started with pizza that I couldn't pay for, and it progressed to firemen, police officers, and dog walkers. This was not something I could explain to my parents. I lay low for years. He emailed me years later and apologized. I was apologetic too because of how that affected him so badly. We talked and became friends, as guys. About a year ago, I believe he decided to not be alive anymore. I hold myself accountable somewhat. To answer the question, I did it for free stuff and I had mixed success. What's a great hobby that does not get more expensive the more you dive into it? Collecting rocks that you find. Plus, it keeps decorating costs down. Who needs some fancy knick-knack to fill up a nook when I've got a large chunk of conglomerate or pegmatite? That'll do. Magnet fishing. All you need is a strong magnet and some rope, really, and maybe a few other things like gloves. Might even find something valuable one day if you're exceedingly lucky. I pulled a 9mm out of a local river. Explaining magnet fishing to a cop you called your cell phone is an interesting conversation. In the Netherlands, people took up metal detecting during lockdown. Lots of unexploded World War II bombs were found. Some guy thought the safest thing to do was dig it up and drop it off at the local police station. The police didn't agree with that. Smithing. It doesn't grow in cost because it starts off astronomically expensive and just stays that way. Learning to mirror sharpen a knife on whetstones like the ancient Japanese masters? $300. Getting your hand stitched shut after touching the blade and losing a pint of blood? Priceless. Extreme couponing. If you're gonna do this, please don't be a jerk to the cashiers. We know you spent hours figuring out how to buy $50 of stuff for $1.63. But it's not our fault when our coupon machine doesn't work, the online coupons don't go through, or if you're 80 cents short of the total needed for that $10 off online coupon you were banking on. Please don't get angry at cashiers. We're happy you're saving so much, but when things go wrong, there's not much the non-managerial staff can do either. Also, don't break up your one purchase into 10 purchases when there's a line in the store. Either wait until there's no line, or be willing to step aside until the line goes down. People don't want to wait in line for 20 minutes while you finesse your purchases. I had one lady who got through 3 broken-up purchases, noticed a line, and then stepped aside and let 2 people in line go before finishing her last 5 in her purchase chain. I swear I wanted to hug that lady. Please don't be rude or a jerk just because your couponing plan didn't work flawlessly. Most of us low-paid staff are rooting for you and want to help you with couponing so long as you're polite, pleasant, and don't hold up our fricking line. Geocaching? It's so easy. All you need is a few small trinkets and a geocaching resource. When I was a kid, my family loved to geocache, and eventually we set one up near our house. An office worker wrote us a long ballad about how excited he was to see a new cache and how he rushed out, found and signed it, and made it back in less than an hour, just in time for his meeting. It was so sweet and memorable. Geocaching is just such a great hobby. I left a laminated card with a QR code that leads to a rickrolling. Well, at least we have a twofer in these follow-up answers. One really wholesome, and the other really jerky, mean sort that I sort of love. I think how funny the Rickroll QR code is depends on how far you were making people go out to get it. Because if that thing is at the top of a mountain and actually listed on a resource, you may be my new hero. Lockpicking. That actually makes more money if you're fast enough. Okay, but seriously, you can do it legally, you know. Lots of people lose their keys or never got keys to something they own. Funny story, one day I had the most horrible, nerve-wracking workday. I just wanted to go home, make dinner, and chill with my significant other. She knew about my workday, so she didn't tell me about how we had a power outage, hoping she could fix it before I got home. She couldn't, and all the apartments around had power. I figured a fuse must have switched off or gone bust. There was a box with fuses in the hallway, and it had a padlock. I tried to call the super, then the electric company, then any neighbor I could find, and nobody had a key. I tried to cut a can of Coke in a way that could shimmy it, but to no avail. I was as angry as I was desperate. All of our devices were running out of juice by 10 p.m. So I called a locksmith. The guy came around within 20 minutes, opened the padlock within 40 seconds, and left. That was quite expensive. I turned on the fuse switch, went back inside, opened a beer, and ordered a lockpicking kit on Amazon. Been carrying it with me ever since. Came in handy twice. Once my boss got locked out of his office, another time a friend lost her bike keys. I've gotten a bit better, but not a lot better, and I think it's a great life skill. It made me evaluate my security choices better, and it's a great conversation topic sometimes. 9 out of 10 would recommend. Wildcrafting. That's pretty much the entire point. Basically, the skill of identifying and utilizing wild plants for things like food, medicine, and other utilities. The point is generally to use local plants and things you already have available as much as possible. You can get pretty far with some really good Googling, joining some groups. Instagram and Facebook both have some pretty active communities, and nothing more. I picked it up about 2 years ago, and I think the only thing I invested in was a $10 pair of gardening gloves. As a note, wildcrafting should be practiced mindfully with sustainability in mind. Take only what you need. Leave enough for the plants and animals to live well and reproduce. Abundance is there, but only if we don't harm it. At this moment, I have in my kitchen some homemade wine, several jars of jam, including hawthorn, myrtle, and redbuds, fire cider, homemade cough syrup, homemade aloe gel, pickles, including olives, capers, and green almonds, mustard stems, mulberry leaves, and several exotic herbal teas. I'm a total amateur, though. If you find the idea interesting, I suggest following people like Pascal Baudard, for instance, even just to get the idea of how far you can get with it. Oddly enough, lace making. Depending on the style of lace you're doing, the initial cost of tools can be fairly steep or super cheap. Some styles just require a needle and only a needle. But anyway, once you've got the equipment, you're only ever required to buy thread and maybe pins or paper. Maybe pattern books, but if you're even a little bit creative, you've got that covered. My source? I used to make lace. Over the course of 15 years, I spent maybe $200. Not 200 a year, 200 spread over 15 years. Most of that was because I wanted specialty threads like hand-spun linen and stuff. I initially read this as lance making, and I'm now in a Wikipedia hole looking at medieval weaponry. I have nothing really to comment, just thought you should know one of the incredibly weird side effects of your reply. Cross-stitch and embroidery. It's fairly cheap in general, but once you have a few sets in, you have a wide variety of colors to do your own. I recently returned to 3D modeling. It's a hobby with a rock-bottom price of entry that you can invest $10 to $20 in at a time. You can start with Blender, which is a free and powerful program that lets you do everything from modeling and sculpting to texture painting and animating. Getting the fundamentals down is also free thanks to incredible tutors like Grant Abbott and Andrew Price. After that, the world is your oyster. You can either throw a few bucks towards more in-depth tutorial courses or buy add-ons that enhance your workflow. You don't have to do any of that though, and you can just let your creativity run wild. I'm pleased to see the popularity of this answer. If you want to learn more about 3D modeling on a budget, I suggest you download Blender from Steam or their official site. For people who are still interested, here are some more tidbits to clear up the confusion. When I made this post, I was thinking specifically about 3D modeling for its own sake, as a relaxing hobby you do to unwind without thinking ahead. Picture yourself sitting down, creating a kitchen or a spaceship or a zombie dog for fun's sake, and feeling good about yourself. That can lead to commissioned work or 3D printing later on, but it absolutely doesn't have to if you don't want it to. Having good hardware helps, but it isn't a prerequisite. Any computer made in the last 10 years is good enough to run Blender, and lets you pick up the fundamentals. Whether you want to upgrade after that is up to you, but you shouldn't feel the need to unless you've gone way down the rabbit hole. Being artsy helps, but it isn't a necessity either. Anyone can get into 3D with time and patience. Playing cards. As long as those aren't Magic the Gathering cards. Writing. It may even happen that by diving into it, you could earn something. I started a podcast as a hobby with 2 friends that moved to different countries in 2018, and we're still going strong. We talk about different topics every couple of weeks, and it's very fun. The only expense we have is the host website, but we only pay because we've uploaded many episodes and needed more cloud space, but it's still very cheap in comparison to other hobbies. Walking around outside and picking up shiny things you find on the floor, sometimes known as goblining or magpieing. Thanks to everyone for helping me realize how expensive all of my hobbies are. Ditto. I mean, collecting plastic miniatures that I'm likely never going to paint for my tabletop gaming hobby is a shamefully expensive habit. There's a reason we in the hobby call our unpainted figures our piles of shame. Reading. Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. Stick collecting. No joke, it sounds dumb at first, but once you get a few solid sticks, you'll start to love it. You should see my arsenal. Game development. Unity is free, Visual Studio is free, Blender is free, Asaprite is $20, but also not necessary. I do highly recommend it though. It's really a fun hobby that doesn't have to cost anything if you don't want it to. The only cost is your sanity. reading books from the library, card tricks, shadow puppetry, pressing flowers, singing, and stargazing. Programming. You already have a computer, tablet, 3DS, etc., and if you need a dedicated device, a Raspberry Pi 4 is under $100. Most tools are free. Open source tools are free forever. The internet is full of tutorials and examples. YouTube has a lot of courses in any field you like. Programming for fun has a competitive side too, but that's a whole other story. Regardless of your hobby, the cost is inversely proportional to your self-control. The more self-control you have, the cheaper the hobby is. Collecting buckets. I've got 7 buckets. The 4th one is also dark blue. Meditation. One of the cheapest hobbies. But people manage to spend money on this too, joining expensive courses, buying aesthetics like expensive candles and mats and stuff, going in on meditation retreats in high-end resorts in exotic locations. People really made this an expensive thing. Weightlifting. Average person would even save a ton of money by fixing their diet as a side effect. I bought my own home gym 10 years ago, paid $2,000 for a used set, and had a few upgrades, so about $2,500 altogether. I have almost all of the equipment needed, minus a leg press station. I've had it for 10 years now, so I guess my home gym would have cost me $20 a month if you divvy it up. A gym membership at an actual place here runs about $80 a month, plus gas and time to get there. I'm super strong and relatively healthy. I should jump on my elliptical more. For the first 5 years, I also ate super healthy and lost a ton of weight. Eating healthy stopped me from eating out and also made my groceries inexpensive. I've been a little more lax now, it's tougher with my wife and kids around. I still have the gym though, and I still like lifting weights. Who knows how many years I've extended my life by? Which, I guess, will cost me money though. God damn it, you can't win. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Gardening. If anything, it becomes virtually free after a few harvests because you can take the seeds out of the vegetables you've just picked and replant them. Plus, you already have free compost from the remaining plant matter and peels and stuff you picked. If you play your cards right while there's an initial investment, it'll pay for itself in the end. Nope, you get addicted to buying new plants. I disagree. You just find new groups and trade. It's amazing how easy it is to grow and propagate most of the stuff you'd buy. I even made a rule. Most, if not all of my annuals will be grown from seed. If I can't enjoy gardening that way, then I just shouldn't do it. Seeds can stay viable for a surprisingly long time, and they're crazy cheap. I'm still using seeds from packets I bought in 2016. Some things don't work like that. Carrots seem to not last that long, for example. But tomatoes, eggplants, aubergine, basil, cilantro, coriander, and onions, a lot of stuff does. More than that, you can buy seeds from heirloom or open-pollinated plants and save seeds from one year to the next. I think I'm on my 3rd or 4th generation of onions. I also started getting into recycling or regenerative gardening. Use the free trash that exists and be smart about what you plant, and you can actually improve the quality of the soil rather than relying on fertilizers or back-breaking labor year after year. Rainforests exist without anybody mining phosphorus and sprinkling it about. Lush landscapes exist all over the planet without anyone managing them. With a little management and forethought, you can create a tiny little ecosystem that doesn't want or need every little thing to be controlled. One major mindset shift that most farmers still haven't adopted, much less gardeners, is to treat your soil like it's a perennial crop that's harvested and pruned by the plants you grow in it, and the way you treat it. A thriving, intentional ecosystem underground will generally result in happy, healthy plants. Origami? Birdwatching? Oh, birdwatching is a slippery slope. $20 for a great field guide to your local birds, $100 for a starter pair of binoculars, $40 to $80 for a nice bird feeder set up at home, then $500 for a decent spotting scope, up to $1,000 for high-end Zeiss or Swarovski binoculars, $8,000 for a trip to Central America with guided forest tours, then $75,000 for an RV so you can travel America chasing rarities once you retire. It really depends on your level of commitment. Cycling, in theory, buy a bike and only have to pay for minor maintenance while increasing fitness levels and happiness. However, one will quickly realize that the proper number of bikes to own is N+1, where N is the current number of bikes owned. Optimizing your personal finances. Ah yes, my favorite hobby. Tied for first with my actual fricking job, doing dishes and cleaning my bathroom. Ah yes, none of these will beat my main hobby though, living a mundane life, never doing anything outside the ordinary until I die in a rest home several decades in the future. Come on, dream bigger, people. Hiking. I love getting lost in outdoor spaces. It inspires my creative work and is generally free. Hiking is free if you do short trips locally, but it does get more expensive the more you get into it. First, you want to get a decent pair of boots at $150 to $200, and a decent day pack at around $100. Then you want the high-tech clothing. Then you want to start doing overnight trips, which means you need an entire set of backpacking equipment, starting with a pack at $250 to $300, plus all the accoutrement needed to survive on your own. Cooking set, tent, sleeping bag, that kind of stuff. Then you want better equipment. Then you want to start going to life-list destinations that require you to get on an airplane. It never ends. Exercising and running. You only need to buy a good pair of shoes and some workout clothes, and you'll be set for a while. Most people running for general fitness are probably not doing more than 20 miles a week, and if you're just going to go out run a few miles throughout the week and the occasional 5 to 10k run, then running is very cheap. You might not even buy 2 pairs of shoes a year. Beyond that, people just need to have the appropriate clothes, a stick of Body Glide, and maybe a water bottle. Drawing. I use a pencil, a pen, and a sketchbook. It's possible to make drawing more expensive. Better pens cost money, colored pencils cost money, digital art supplies cost money, but it's not necessary to buy those things in order to enjoy drawing. D&D. Depending on how invested you can get into at the start, if you get all of the books, you could easily spend over $100, but you can also find PDFs for a lot cheaper. After that, though, you just have to find people to play with, and you don't have to spend any more money. Learning languages? ? Playing an instrument. Once you have the instrument, the price drops drastically. I wasn't thinking about how obsession factors into playing music as a hobby though, and that most people who play music will eventually want a higher-end instrument. This is especially the case with Western instruments, and even more so with Western orchestral instruments. The reason I specified Western is because I personally play 2 Korean percussion instruments. One where a high-end version is probably $30, and the other where the high-end version is closer to $150. This is due to the fragility of both instruments, because nobody wants to buy a $500 plus one every few months or year or so when it breaks depending on the frequency of play and how hard you hit both. They're not supposed to be hit too hard. Computer programming. Python is free, the modules are free, new modules keep coming out and getting better for free. Plenty of resources out there, including YouTube, Automate, theboringstuff.com. They're all free. A hobby that changes the way you see the world and adds another method of problem solving. It gets you exposed to all kinds of other fields. Also, it could land you a work-from-home job making great money or save you time on completing boring, repetitive tasks. Learning Python gets you a huge head start on learning other languages as well, but Python can be used for a whole project. It's vast. Disc golf. It's really fun and you can buy discs for like $10 and that's pretty much all you need. I can't believe I had to get all the way through the video just to find this. Disc golf cost me about $30 to $50 for the first 3 years. I just used the same discs and I was gifted some. And even when I did decide to get more discs, it's incredibly reasonably priced. That and most courses have free access. It's a great sport. Dumpster diving. Cliff diving. It's extremely cheap if you don't survive the first time. Knitting. You could probably buy all the needles and other various gadgets you'll ever need for $200. Then you only need to pay for the yarn for the project you're working on. There are loads of free tutorials online. Skateboarding. It's very cheap so far. I do recommend buying a good quality board and not something from Walmart. But I've gotten a lot out of this board, and when I break the board, instead of paying another $140 for a whole new complete, I just have to buy a new deck for $30 to $65 and so on for the rest of the parts. Just wanted to add now how much I've loved skateboarding since I started a couple of months ago. I never thought I'd do something like it, and I used to have horrible balance, but with some work, my balance has become better than I could have dreamed of, and I've had a ton of fun. All of my friends are starting now. Bodyweight fitness, barefoot running, yoga, but obviously you can let costs accelerate if you have to go to Mexico to run with Tarahumara, or go to expensive yoga classes locally or in India. Daydreaming is fun, then you write it down and you have a story. Not a good one, but it is a story. Sleeping. I've been trying to start this hobby, but I'm not very good at it, and it can get very expensive depending on commitment and personal preference. Reading. The library is free and there are always cheap books at garage sales and thrift shops. Recreational maths. All you need is a brain. Fanfiction. As long as you already own a computer, you're good to go, because it's actually illegal to make money off of it. To do so would be copyright infringement. You may need money for the therapy you'll need when you read the wrong stuff while looking around for some inspiration for your own work, though. That is true. I think that reading Harry Potter and the School of Prayer and Miracles may have actually caused parts of my body to give up and cease working, requiring some time off and several hospital visits. Expensive stuff. Pixel art. Unlike other graphic design methods where you might need expensive software like Photoshop or Illustrator, you can use MS Paint or a variety of free softwares, even for animation. It's a great hobby because the pixels limit where you can place them, there's a finite number of combinations and such, and refining techniques with color palettes, lighting and blending and stuff. There's so much you can do. Aquariums and aquascaping. If you don't fall victim to the way people try to flex when you can use natural resources to recreate natural habitats, since that's basically the goal. Potting soil and ingenuity trumps ADA tanks and expensive lights any day. I'm just trying to make a sanctuary for my fish, not flex on the gram. Browsing Am I the Genius on YouTube. Russian roulette, although there is a 1 in 6 chance of it leading to a funeral, and funerals are expensive. Homemade salsa. A food processor is the most expensive thing you'll buy for it. There's a salsa snob Reddit if you want to learn. It's not hard. Collecting ALF memorabilia. Nobody wants it and it never gets more expensive for my GD brother-in-law to buy me more worthless junk for birthdays and Christmas. He thinks it's funny every time, so the laughs are cheap too. I'm lucky in that most of my hobbies save or generate money. Programming. This has become my career, but I started making games and mobile apps that did okay and still generate income today. Writing. I've had about 10 professional sales. Not a lot of money, but all I had to invest was my time. Cooking and baking. It saves on restaurants and generally results in better, healthier food. Gardening. You grow your own ingredients. I live in a condo, but I grow herbs and hot peppers. I put those in everything. And biking. Save on transportation costs and get some exercise. The commute to work went from the worst to the best part of my day. The upfront cost of a good bike can be high, but it pays for itself. And as a tangent, there is scuba diving, and okay, this is expensive. I know it can be an income generator or a career, but it's a bigger investment of time and money to get there. What's the movie so bad that it killed off the whole franchise? When The Cat in the Hat with Mike Myers was released, Dr. Seuss, or Theodore Geisel's wife, Audrey, was so disappointed and disgusted with how it turned out, she never approved of any more live-action adaptations. Subsequent films have now instead only used computer animation adaptations instead of live-action studio versions. It's a guilty pleasure movie for me. I love how gross and wacky it is, but I'm very aware that it deserves the legacy it got. Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters. There were 3 more books in the PJ story, plus all of Rick Riordan's other books and spin-offs. There was so much potential and it was just so botched. To be honest, the first movie killed the franchise. It wasn't very high quality to begin with, but more importantly, it was completely self-contained and didn't introduce any plot points of the series' longer story arc. Disney's The Lone Ranger and John Carter were both supposed to be the first of a series, like Pirates of the Caribbean. I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean was supposed to be a one-off movie that ended so successfully they decided to turn it into a franchise. Savvy? The Inkheart book series was fantastic. I was very dissatisfied in the movie, the only shining light being Brendan Fraser as the main guy. Green Lantern. They had big plans for a sequel and a wide story arc, but because the movie bombed at the box office, all of that was scrapped. Allegiant, the movie after Divergent and Insurgent. The end of the Divergent series was never made into a movie because Allegiant turned out so badly. I think because Harry Potter split the last book into 2 movies, everyone around that time tried to do the same for a cash grab. I'm looking at you, Hunger Games. So they split the last book into 2 movies, then changed the last movie into a TV miniseries, but forgot to check with the cast first. Since it wasn't in their contract and they didn't want to do it, they bailed. To be fair, Book Allegiant ruined the franchise as well. I was excited for the expanded world building, but the character undevelopment destroyed the narrative and series for me. My god, I was mad at Artemis Fowl. I had just read the entire series. I didn't have high hopes in the first place because of Disney's track record of book adaptations, but somehow I was still disappointed. They changed everything around, had bad acting, which I blame the director for, and they left out the most important scenes. Eragon could have been epic. Over a year later, I'm still kind of mad they messed it up so badly. I'm still hoping they'll try again now that some years have passed and the general audience has forgotten about it. I heard there were plans for a Stephen King cinematic universe of some sort, but given how badly Dark Tower did, that's probably never going to happen now. Considering how the movie has nothing at all to do with the books, I'm not surprised it was scrapped. I freaking love the Dark Tower series, and the movie was just a joke. Fantastic Four. The 2005 version wasn't bad, but the 2015 remake, or Fant4stick, was awful. We'll see how the new one is. The Avatar: The Last Airbender film was terrible. When it came out, I saw it in theaters because I was, and still am, a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender series. The moment they produced Aang's name as Ong, I knew the movie was going to flop. I came out of the theater so unsatisfied. I've never tried to give The Last Airbender movie another try since then. John Carter lost a crapload of money and was supposed to be a giant trilogy, but the first one flopped out the gate, to the tune of losing somewhere around $200 million at the end of the day, making it one of the biggest bombs of all time. Nearly or mostly killed Taylor Kitsch's career too, though I have to point out he was supremely excellent as David Koresh in the miniseries Wacko, and everyone should watch if they never have. I mean, I actually really enjoyed the film for what it was, but yeah, the marketing around it sucked. By which I mean I don't remember there being any marketing whatsoever. Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. The most expensive indie film and most expensive European film of all time. More than a $200 million budget. And it barely broke even at the box office, probably netting a 9-figure loss when factoring in marketing and publicity costs. Neither Cara Delevingne nor Dane DeHaan have worked much since, though this was hardly the first franchise killer either of them have been involved with. Self-Deletion Squad for Delevingne and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 for DeHaan being the examples. Allegiant. It not only killed its franchise by cancelling its Part 2, it made Hollywood not even want to make young adult fiction novels into movies anymore, since the whole series boiled down the genre to such basic elements there was hardly any flavour to it. Percy Jackson. I know it came out with 2 movies, but the first was so detested by fans that the fandom collectively decided to pretend they don't exist. As a result, the second one failed miserably, and it was never picked up again despite being huge young adult movie material. Amazing Spider-Man 2. They had gigantic plans to spin off a gigantic Spider-Verse film out of that film, but it was such a muddled mess it brought it to a screeching halt. But hey, Spider-Man's back in the MCU, and Sony is trying to piggyback a Spider-Verse off of that, so it all worked out in the end. Queen of the Damned. Interview with the Vampire was amazing. 8 years later, they skipped the second book in the series and went straight to the third. I don't know why. The second book, The Vampire Lestat, was the best in the series. Maybe they couldn't get Tom Cruise to continue and just decided that would be the end of it. Then some idiot came up with the idea to do a crap job of Queen of the Damned and, well, the rest is history. Pacific Rim Uprising. The original Pacific Rim was the perfect kaiju movie in my opinion. I think that any sequel would have been ill-advised because the only way to really follow that would be more of the same, but bigger, and I don't think that's a sustainable formula. But what we got was even worse than that. The Last Airbender. I'm guessing by the ending they had elaborate plans to turn this into a franchise of all of the seasons, and wow, so horribly bad. I mean, they managed to mispronounce the names of all the characters. If you're going to turn a cartoon into a live-action movie, it's probably a good idea to have everyone involved in the project actually watch an episode or 2 of the cartoon first. Also, prior to the movie, I'd never even watched an episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I had an even greater appreciation of how bad they messed up after watching them all during the pandemic. Ouch. Imagine what the fight between Fire Lord Ozai and Ong would have looked like in the Shyamalan version. Slow, with garbage bending, and Ozai would probably look nothing like the series, and sprinkle in some corny writing and acting, then boom, Shyamalan approved. So the narrator's story was not unlike this commenter's. I'd seen bits of Avatar, but my first real exposure to the world was that bloody movie. And my god, I am not a hard man to please when it comes to cinema, but that thing was pure, unfiltered garbage. Only after having my arm endlessly twisted by friends did I watch the source material, and now, of course, I know that not only is it great, but its characters are some of the most wonderful in cartoon history. The Golden Compass. Their biggest crime was not including the ending to the book. How do you fade to black right before the best part? And completely cut the church out of a story that's fundamentally about resisting religion's attempt to control everything? Batman and Robin. There were multiple sequels planned, and instead the continuity was ended and rebooted 7 years later, with the Dark Knight trilogy completely changing the tone of the franchise to the exact opposite of Batman and Robin. As far as I remember, there was one movie planned called Batman Triumphant, which would have featured the Scarecrow, and the director was planning to make it right to give the franchise a movie worth of its name. But it was all cancelled, so he didn't get the chance to redeem himself. Sorry, Joel Schumacher. The ideas I remember hearing for sequels were Scarecrow creating Man-Bat, Scarecrow's gas causing villains from previous Batman films to reappear as hallucinations of Batman's fears. If they got Nicholson and DeVito back, this could have been interesting. And Harley Quinn, reimagined as Joker's daughter, showing up to get revenge on Batman for the death of her father. The latest version of The Mummy with Tom Cruise. It was supposed to herald a bunch of Universal Films monster feature reboots, including Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Russell Crowe. I don't give a crap what he looks like. I wasn't going to watch any movie about a mummy without Brendan Fraser. Didn't Men in Black International kill off the 22 Jump Street sequel? Men on 23rd Street. Yep. I Am Number 4. The movie is just awful as it leaves out so much cool crap from the books. It's just a shameless cash grab and your typical high school romance with guy gets special powers and falls in love with quiet girl. I thought Timothy Olyphant did a good job, but he's just a good actor. Warcraft the movie. It pains me so much to say this one because I am a WoW player and I actually liked it. I thought it was meh when I saw it in theater, but now I've watched it at home half a dozen times and I like it more. I really wanted this to be the start of a whole string of Warcraft movies, but I just don't think that will happen. See, I thought they were making another one because even though it bombed here, it was like a massive blockbuster in China. And I actually liked the movie. Part of it was expectations. I'd heard it was god-awful and terrible and not worth my time, so my expectations were very low. But when I finally sat down to watch it, I enjoyed the hell out of it. Mortal Instruments, City of Bones. They changed so much of the story from the books that there's no way they could have come back from it. The Dark Tower. I tried to go into that movie with an open mind, knowing it wasn't going to be anything like the books. I really tried to give it a chance, but that movie is utter dog-do. The screenplay needed to be written by someone that had actually read the gosh darn book. Fantastic Four, 2015 version, Fantastic. The cast seemed pretty stellar too. Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mara. Boy, was it bad though. Killed off any chances of a sequel. I think Crimes of Grindelwald will prove to be the downfall of the Fantastic Beasts franchise. I think a lot of people don't understand what killed off the franchise means. I found a comment saying Endgame. It's the second highest grossing movie ever, man. There's a difference between killing a franchise and closing a story arc. Infinity War only killed off half the franchise. Solo, which I actually didn't mind too much, killed off the plans for more Star Wars spin-off movies focusing on side characters. Instead, we got lots of Star Wars TV shows, which I'm more than cool with. This was written in 2020. Rest in peace, commenter. I wouldn't say it was Solo's fault. I'd blame The Last Jedi. I remember a lot of people refusing to see Solo to show the mouse how much they hated Episode 8. I saw Solo, it was cool. I would have preferred Han's origins from the EU, though. That's the extended universe, not the European Union. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Eragon. It had 3 awesome books, it could have been the next Lord of the Rings, it had video games, and then out came that movie. It was such a flop that nobody wanted to speak of it ever again. To be honest, rereading the books past adolescence, I've realized the books are really not that great. The storylines are poorly written and Eragon is a horribly blatant, self-insert Gary Stew. The movies are somehow worse than that, but there was really zero chance that this series would ever be more than a guilty pleasure at best. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. I'm sure this was meant to be the first in like 7 movies. It's a shame. They had a great cast, but it just bombed at the box office. does Game of Thrones Season 8 count? But who has a better story than Bran the Broken? The boy who sat in a tree for like a whole fricking year. Hell yes, it counts. I tried rewatching Game of Thrones recently and I just couldn't. The horrible ending has tainted the entire property. As far as prequels or other planned series, I do not give a single F. I was a committed fan, but not anymore. It still amazes me how Game of Thrones was on everyone's mind for a couple of years, and after the finale, it's almost as if it's been wiped out from the collective consciousness. Star Trek Nemesis killed off Star Trek movies for 7 years, and even then we got a reboot instead of a continuation of the old franchise. The Enterprise show, which is better than most people give it credit for, kept the franchise limping along for a couple of years after Nemesis, but the Prime Universe, as a franchise, was effectively dead up until they brought it back with Star Trek Discovery a couple of years ago. I do, however, think that the Next Generation cast as a whole had run out of a bit of gas from a storytelling and audience interest standpoint, and that Nemesis was basically the excuse used to move on from them. The movie Titan AE literally forced Fox Animation Studios to shut down permanently. Update: I looked up when Fox Animation Studios shut down and when Titan AE was released. Fox was shut down 10 days after the movie was released. A damn shame too, because that movie is actually fantastic. Dragon Ball Evolution. Shut up. We do not discuss that film. We don't even contemplate its existence. Rise of Skywalker is probably going to preclude a new Star Wars trilogy indefinitely. Episode 8 killed it for me. 9 just kinda kicked the corpse. I find bashing Rise of Skywalker is literally flogging a dead horse. Well, in particular, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, but really the entire Chronicles of Narnia film series was so bad it killed off any desire for more films in the series, probably forever. I don't know. The first book had a lot of film potential if you ask me, and I outright liked the second movie. But after that, yeah, I think each book gets less and less filmable as it goes along. Maybe a TV series would have worked better. You know, color me surprised that nobody has mentioned Dune. The 1980s movies was really pushed hard before release. It was apparently going to be bigger than Star Wars, and then it flopped. After that, nothing until 2021. Artemis Fowl. I must save the world. No, idiot, you're a criminal prodigy holding a mythical creature against her will. The books did a good job of melting his cold heart over time to eventually become a bit of an anti-hero, but good lord, what a mess. Why can't anyone do young adult novels properly? Grease 2, and disclaimer, it is my favorite Grease and among my favorite Lifetime movies. Hot on the heels of the success of Grease, more Grease films were ordered. The production was a total crapshoot, the film was literally still being written as it was filming, there were cast issues, it flopped, and as a result, a potential plan for Greases 3 through 5 was scrapped. Bonus, years later those scripts were reworked and became another successful franchise, High School Musical. Any movie after Terminator 2 and the Terminator franchise. Look, I know I'm in the minority, but I didn't hate Terminator 3. It had some good elements, but they should have just gotten Cameron and Hamilton back to sew up the franchise. And then it just stopped. Could have been the greatest sci-fi trilogy ever, instead it's more like The Grandfather. First 2 awesome, third was a disappointment, and then trash. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Fantastic movie, and it had the setup for more sequels. It just didn't get the viewership it needed. Also, everything happening with Armie Hammer in 2021. I think it's safe to say the plans for a sequel have finished for good. It didn't kill the entire franchise, but I'm surprised Warner Bros. Still continued producing the other Fantastic Beast movies after so many people hated the second one because of awful storylines. There were too many new characters, terrible screenplay, creating new plot holes and errors, bad pacing, and not to mention that a lot of the storylines didn't really lead up to anything other than some fan service. It felt like the movie had an identity crisis and didn't know which main character should be the mascot of the franchise. Was it Newt, Dumbledore, or was it Credence? The movie didn't do any of these characters justice in the end. The Last Airbender. F.U. Shyamalan. Ender's Game. The source material is so good you don't even understand. Had the chance to be such a mega franchise. Instead, they cast Rico from Hannah Montana to play one huge pinnacle role, hired a kid who couldn't act to play Ender, completely missed 60% of what actually made the books good, and gave characters who make the story worth tuning in for no screen time. They took a masterpiece and made the worst version of it possible. I still remember the hour-plus long of disappointment in that movie. Solo. I've heard it's actually pretty good, but from what I remember, Disney did a real bad job of promoting it, combined with the recent backlash from The Last Jedi, and the fact that it was sandwiched in between Infinity War and Deadpool 2, meant it was basically destined to flop, and Star Wars hasn't since been able to really recover movie-wise. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's what convinced Lucasfilm to make the Obi-Wan adaptation a show instead of a movie. Ghostbusters 2016. It was so bad that the creators of the new Ghostbusters pretended it didn't happen. Sure, blame toxic masculinity instead of toxic lack of talent, toxic lack of ideas, or toxic femininity, or whatever the frick that would be. And sure, it's toxic masculinity, not toxic shameless cash grab. Now that I think about it, didn't actors and producers try to use toxic masculinity bullcrap to guilt-trip viewers for not liking the movie? If only they'd actually, written a script for it. Instead they just had the actors ad-lib everything and try to get it in editing. Even the original Ghostbusters would have sucked if all they did was put Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis in a scene and told them to make crap up as they went. Are you talking about the all-woman movie? I avoided watching it until recently, and to be honest, I'm not really sure it deserved all the hate it got. As a standalone movie, it's pretty good. I'm not a huge fan of Leslie Jones in her role. That was my only major issue. Chris Hemsworth as the ditzy man-meets-secretary was hilariously good casting. I'd say that if people haven't seen it, give it a shot. They won't be making any direct sequels, but it's good for a laugh. The remake of RoboCop was absolutely terrible. They made it PG-13. That right there was the first sign it was going to be crap. They tried a PG-13 RoboCop already, and RoboCop 3 will be streets ahead of the remake. Predator 2018 should have killed the franchise for a bit. Luckily, it didn't. X-Men Dark Phoenix. Should have stopped at Logan, man. The Mummy with Tom Cruise. It was supposed to start a whole universe, the Dark Universe, with Mummy, Dracula, a couple of the others. But it flopped, and it took the whole universe with it. Titanic. They foolishly sunk the ship and killed off the male lead. Yeah, they really could have written what happened to that boat better. I mean, that's the great thing about fiction. You can make anything you want happen. I say in the inevitable reboot, we make the boat turn into a transformer and blast off into the sky, saving everyone. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales seems like one. I know they haven't come out with any other movies after that, but I probably won't watch them even if they do. Must have watched the first 3 movies more than 10 times each. But Stranger Tides, Semi-Killed It, and Dead Men Tell No Tales was the final nail in the coffin. Wonder Woman 1984. What a load of steaming garbage. Curse the damage you did to Pedro Pascal's career. Maze Runner 2. The first concept was really cool, but they just randomly changed it into a zombie movie? I like those, but please, keep them separate. Back in the early 2000s, I recall a whole string of attempted youth and young adult novel adaptations that sucked so hard there were never sequels. Eragon. In my opinion, the source material was already pretty meh, but the studio went full awful on it, bungling the story, maybe to avoid an angry letter from George Lucas, and trying to rely on cheesy effects. A series of unfortunate events. They tried shoving 3 books into a single movie, plus a dumb murder plot that wasn't in the books, rushing through it all with barely a plot while hoping one famous actor would carry the entire film. Thank goodness for the Netflix show. Cirque du Freak. A modern vampire young adult novel that was okay, and then there was this cheesy B-movie of the first book and the second book mashed together. Weirdly cast and directed, it didn't really seem like anyone making the film expected there to be a sequel. And there's others, I'm sure. Alien Covenant. There were supposed to be more prequels that brought us to the original Alien, but alas, it bombed. I hear there's a TV show in the works. It's too big of a franchise to actually kill, but the prequel series is cancelled. In some alternate world somewhere, the correct answer is The Fast and the Furious. Jaws the Revenge killed the entire Jaws series abruptly and got 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Eragon, one of the most successful New Age fantasy series ever, and the directors hamstrung it in every way possible. At one point, the author was asked if he wanted to see a sequel, and he said he was still waiting on the first book to be made into a movie. I should repeat, this comment was written in 2021. I think Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull put an end to the Indiana Jones movies. Even though they were trying to pass the torch to Shia LaBeouf, I think he dropped it. I can't understand how the director could review that horrible Tarzan scene and say, "Yep, this goes in the final cut." Every Hellraiser after the third one. The first was amazing. Second, pretty good. Third, tolerable only because of certain scenes. After that, complete crap show. Highlander. Queen did Who Wants to Live Forever for the first one, and it got good reviews. The second and third were terrible. According to my dad, who watched it in theaters, he told the people lining up for the next showing the whole story because he didn't want people to go through the pain he went through. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.